All right, good evening, everyone. We're going to get things underway. We're here tonight for the preliminary budget adoption, fiscal year 25-26. Tonight is Monday, March 17th. It's a little after 7 p.m. And first order of business, as always, is the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Next on the agenda is the land acknowledgement statement, which I will read. The town of South Kingstown pays homage to the indigenous people and land on which the town is now located. Let this acknowledgement serve as a reminder of our ongoing efforts to recognize, honor, reconcile, and partner with the Narragansett tribe whose land and water we benefit from today. Next, we have the roll call.
Council President McEntee.
Here.
Council Vice President Marin.
Here.
Councilmember Bergner.
Here.
Councilmember Alley.
Here.
Councilmember Wedgemont.
Here.
All members are present.
Thank you. All right, we're going to get right into it. I'm now going to hand it over to Town Manager Jim Manny. We have a presentation regarding the fiscal year 25-26 Town Council preliminary budget. Jim, go ahead.
Thank you, Council President. I'm just going to have a few words to say before I get into the presentation, and then we'll get through it as quickly as we can. Some of the stuff is worth repeating that I made from the initial Town Manager proposed budget, which was on March 3rd of 2025. So that was the initial Town Manager's proposed budget once again. And first I want to thank Brian Sylvia to my left. He's hundreds and hundreds of hours has been working on this budget, he and his staff, and we finally got it exactly where we need it to be. It's an accurate budget. And once again, I want to thank the directors that helped with this budget because they submitted realistic numbers that were easy to work with, and it's a very lean budget for the town. So I'm happy with that as well. The residents are here, and the residents are watching, and we don't thank them enough. There's a 99% collection rate in this town on the tax levy, which is high, and it's a testament to the dedication to the town. No one likes paying taxes, but we all can tolerate it if there's transparency, accountability, and oversight, which there is in the budgets that this town presents. I say this every time, and I mean it. Every dollar spent is like it's our own. So I just want to assure the residents that that is what our goal was with this budget. Let's go to page 3. So this is a 40-page document that most of it it's a recap of what was we gave in the Town Manager's budget on March 3rd, but we'll go through this as well. So let's go over the budget calendar for everyone that's watching. March 17th, tonight, the Town Council adoption of the preliminary budget. The deadline is March 22nd of 2025. April, Tuesday the 15th, public hearing number 1 on the fiscal year 25-26 municipal and school department budget. Thursday, April 17th, public hearing number 2 on the fiscal year 25-26 municipal and school budget. Monday, April 21st, is a 4 p.m. deadline to submit petitions for revisions to the preliminary budget, which would require 25 signatures. April 28th, Monday, consideration of petitions and adoption of the final operations budget, which is held in the regular session of the Town Council meeting. May 25, on Monday the 12th, a 4 p.m. deadline for submissions of final petitions for referendum. 200 signatures would be required for that. Thursday, May 16th, the deadline for petition signatures to be verified by the Board of Canvassers. June of 25. Tuesday, the 10th, possible budget referendum on the Tuesday following the first Saturday in June. And June 13th, Friday the 13th, tax assessor sets the tax rate for the fiscal year 25-26 operating budget. Next slide, page 4. Personnel costs, which is a summary of changes that we are looking at in this budget. If you look at the IBPO, International Brotherhood of Police Officers, There's 2% built into that, although we really don't know what that will be because we're in negotiations as we speak. The International Association of Firefighters, 2%, which is year 2, which starts July 1st. Council 94, which will be in year 2, a wage adjustment, which was included wage adjustments, comparisons with other cities and towns, but that was also a 2% minimum increase. The South Kingstown MEA personnel in year 2 would get a 3% raise. In the non-union, it was proposed that the personnel would get a 3% raise. If you look at the proposed, the next line down, the proposed position changes within town, these would be new full-time employees. These would be in the proposed budget. This is what was recommended. A parks maintenance technician for Council 94 and parks maintenance. The wages are $62,100. The benefits are $34,000, approximately $500. Total would be $96,600, approximate. Paramedic positions, 2 were recommended for the EMS, South Kingstown EMS. Why were those recommended? Next year at this time, we're hopeful that we'll be opening a new EMS station, and we anticipate that it'll have to be staffed by 8 EMS personnel. We hired 2 last year. We're hoping to hire 2 this year and 4 next year. If you look at those EMS positions, for 2 full-time employees, the wages would be $134,700. The benefits would be $63,700, and the total will be $198,500. The next one is a communications manager, which would be a non-union position in the town manager's office. The proposed FTE for that would be $94,600. Total will be $124,300, which included the benefits. Next line was Director of Grants and Special Projects, a non-union position out of the town manager's office. The wages on that matched the communications manager, which was $94,600, approximately $30,000 benefits, total $124,000 total. There was a consolidation of 2 civilian police positions at the, one is a records position, and the other one was, I believe it was an IT position, but it combined to be 1 FTE instead of 2, which, so really, the proposed, there were 5 FTEs that were requested, of which there's 1 subtraction from the police department, which will bring it down to 4. Once again, that's a proposed position change. Page 5. If you look at the top, there was the school fund. This is the proposed budget highlights. And in 25-26, the proposed budget summary. The school fund, $62,587,000, with an increase of $128,000, which changed from last year was 0.21%. And Brian Sylvia will go over that, exactly what that is I have one more slide after this. The general fund is the town general fund, $34,086,000. And you'll see that there's an increase of $1,341,000, which is a 4.1% change over last year. And that is really a result of the personnel changes that took place last year under the collective bargaining agreements. The debt service fund, $3,542,000. And the increase over last year was $1,744,000, with a 97% increase. So what is that? That's the bond anticipation notes from the debt service that the town is funding for the new high school. So that, you'll notice that number right there of $1,744,000 was the driver of that increase from last year. The proposed tax transfer to schools. In my budget, it was recommended the schools be level funded at $55,994,000. The proposed property tax levy, next line, was $79,333,000. You'll notice that it went up $2,587,000 $1,000, and that was really an increase due to the bond anticipation notes. And you'll see on the far right, there was a 3.3% increase change. 1.79% of that 3.37% was due to the bond anticipation notes for the new high school. The proposed tax rate, which took into account the reval, would be $9.04, which is a reduction of the $2.01 from last year, which was $11.05. But really, it's once again, that took into the revaluation. So we're trying to compare apples and apples, but Brian can go over that as well, what the other number could be without considering the reval. The net assessed value of the town of South Kingston and all the properties is $8,754,086,000, an increase of $1,808,000,000 from last year. The percent change is $26.04%, an increase of 26.04% in the reval this period right here. Page 6. This is a summary of estimated net assessed values less exemptions. So if you look at the taxable land and buildings, once again, $6.8 billion is the adopted tax roll, the proposed in 24-25. 25-26, it would raise to $8.6 billion, a net change of $1.8 billion, same number that I gave you in the previous slide. Tangible property, correct myself, on that same line, it went up 26.28%. Tangible property, it adopted in 24-25 was $90,517,000. 25-26, the proposed tax roll will be $97,753,000, with an increase of approximately 8%. If you look at the final line, you'll see that the numbers, the total taxable property, 24-25 was $6.945 billion, 25-26, $8.754 billion, and the net change was $1.808 billion. I will just go over the final two lines. I'd like to highlight this to show you that the town does more with less. First two lines, if you look at this is the 25-26 proposed tax levy needed by the town. If you look at the first line, the total property taxes required. The town is $21,985,000. That represents the allocation of the tax levy of approximately 27.67%. Look at the next line. The schools' property tax required would be $57,481,000, and that represents a 72.33% of every tax dollar. So I will now turn over this portion back over to you, Brian, and then we'll continue. Does anyone have any questions on those numbers that I gave you so far?
Thank you, Jim.
Thank you, Jim. Good evening. I wanted to back up a little bit and just go over how we arrive at these numbers. So the $57,481,486 for the school department at the top on the under the schools, that is their local appropriation that's proposed at $55,994,000. Total debt obligations for the school department, which is the assumed amount for the bands of $1,850,000, and their current debt obligations is $2,344,000. Subtracting out the anticipated amount we'll receive for state aid and the amount we'll be using from the debt service fund balance, the debt obligations of the school department would be $1,486,713. That number added to their local appropriation is how you arrive at the $57,481 number, and then thus the 72.33% of the rate. So I just wanted to back into that and how we arrived at that, because that's a driving force than the rest of the way. Excuse me. The other tax revenue, that is made up of prior year tax revenue, interest on taxes, and payment in lieu of tax agreements. And that is, again, broken down by the same percentage. We get a total amount in of $1.1 million, and it's broken down by the percents. Jim has already gone over the assessed value. So this is, and we've gone over once you get to the tax levy and what we're going to get from the other, I'm going to go down to the bottom where you see the summary. That's how we get to the number needed. So current year taxes in the budget, we need to raise $78,288,545 on the current year taxes, and we know the amount for our other tax revenue of $1,178,000. So we have to raise $79,476,243 to balance this budget. And then again, there you see the split, $21,985,757 for the town and $57,481,486 for the schools. On the next page. Once again, I want to note, this is actually on the fourth line down. As of this year, the tangible property tax for the town, or for all cities and towns within Rhode Island, are now locked. So the tangible property has a tax rate of 11.05 moving forward, as that is what it was locked at. That's the current year tax that we're in right now. So we know the amount as well for that, so then we have to back into the rest of our tax levy when subtracting the tangible out. And that's where you'll see the distribution of the tax rate, 904 total. It would be $664 associated with the school department and $2.50 for the town. That would raise on the levy $20,581,000 for the town and $56,164 for the school department. And then that is a change overall of $2.5 million. And again, as noted previously by Jim, the proposed tax levy of 3.37%. As Jim noted, when going over the tax information, we have discussed some other things. If we weren't going through a reval this year, the assumed rate would be, and this is again assuming we've been averaging between 40 million and 45 million in growth. So assuming 40 million in growth this year, our assumed rate would be $11.36 if we were not going through a reval. That would raise the funds necessary to balance this budget. And also, as Jim was noting, if we did not have to fund the year one of the bands this year, we would have a need of a levy increase of 1.79% to balance this budget. On the next page, you'll see the history of the rate distribution between the town and school. And this year proposed again at 27.67 for the town and 72.33 for the school, for a total rate of 904. On the next slide, this is all funds. So this is a total all funds budgeted for the town, which is proposed at $111,120,580, an increase of 3.59%. Overall, that's an increase, as noted previously, of 4.1% for the general fund, 0.21% for education, 97.05% for debt service, 6.31% for leisure services, and 6.11% of utility funds. Then I was just going to go through I just have a department, I'm sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself. Thought I was on the departments. So general fund revenue. This is a breakdown of general fund revenue proposed for the upcoming year. This top line, the general property taxes, that's again made up of the current year tax levy and then prior year taxes, interest on taxes, and payment in lieu of tax agreements. That's proposed for an increase of 3.22%. State federal aid is the bulk of which is proposed from within the governor's budget this year. Licenses, permits showing a small increase of 3.88%. I wanted to make note again of the department revenue and the operating transfers in. There's a shift there on how we are reporting or how we're looking to report going forward the services provided by the facilities department in cleaning other area facilities like the Guild, Rec Center, things of that nature. It was listed as a department revenue previously, and our auditors are asking us now to put it in as an operating transfer in. And finally on this, I just wanted to, two other ones I wanted to note. Revenue from investments, obviously you're seeing a sharp increase there. And again, the $896,000, that is approximately where we were about 6 months through this current fiscal year. So that is, we are in excess of that in our current year right now. But again, there is a lot of unknowns out there. So we'd like to try and take as much of a conservative approach as possible there. But that was the rationale on the revenue from investments. So that has been a volatile one, and we expect it to be volatile in the future. And finally, actually two final ones, I'm sorry. Operating transfers out, the large increase there, where you're seeing an increase of just over $1 million, that would again be associated with the transfer out to the debt service fund and funding the year one of the bans. And then finally, the fund balance application applied, that we're showing a decrease of just over $240,000 to $1,550,000. Again, overall increase proposed at 4.1%. Here's a slide showing our fund balance over the last 5 years. Presently, our fund balance as of the 2024 audited financials is $16,747,767, which makes up 18.46% of our operating revenues for 2025. Now we're getting into the departments. Unless there were questions, I was kind of going to run through these relatively quickly. We've gone through these, but the big driver here that you'll see on this slide, this is general government. The first of 3 slides are associated with general government. The driver here is town manager's office, again, where there are 2 new positions being proposed, and that's the driver here. On the next slide, page 14, you're seeing most of the balance of the general government. One of the larger moves is the finance department, which is having a software for tax collections moved from IT to finance, because it is just a finance department only application. And finally, on the last slide, associated with general government is zoning and facilities. The largest increase here is facilities, and that is again associated with the moving all utility expenses to the facilities department within the general fund. This again is made up of fuel oil, electricity, natural gas, wastewater fees, water fees, and propane. Moving those fees over to facilities make up $322,000 of the proposed increase in this department of $360,000. $40,000. Public safety, next slide. Overall, public safety is proposed for an increase between all departments of 5.02%. Largest driver here is EMS, where they're having 2 new positions proposed. EMS is proposed for an increase of $484,000. Next slide, associated with public services. Public services overall is proposed for an increase of 4.14%. And most of this is, again, contractual from the new contracts. The next slide, slide 18, is leisure services. And this slide is impacted by both a one-time expense within park maintenance that within the current fiscal year that is not in this year's budget, as well as the move of the utility expenses out of these departments. So overall, the sum of the leisure services is going down 4.15%. Next is library administration, which is proposed for an increase of 1.72%. Other expenses, you have town healthcare, and this is healthcare. This is the expense that would be transferred to the OPEB fund. That is proposed at 0. Municipal insurance, that is the various insurance coverages the town has, which is proposed at $570,000. Unemployment at $19,000. Workers' compensation at $233,000, and the contingency at $60,000. Overall, there is a decrease proposed here of 19.82%. The next slide is the contributions to outside agencies which is currently budgeted at $79,050, of which $7,000 is for parades. So available for the contributions is $72,050 as proposed, and we currently have requests of $144,412. On the next slide, contributions to human services. We currently have a proposed amount of $103,000, and the requested balance is $162,260. And this is the capital outlay that was approved by the council in January 2025, which is a reduction of just over $60,000 at $1,983,300. Then we get into the side funds. This is the Peacedale office building. This is proposed for an increase of $2,690 over the current year. Senior services is proposed for a decrease of $35, and their transfer from the general fund is also decreasing by $16,827. The neighborhood guild is proposed for an increase of $179,064, and this is a self-sustaining fund. It does not receive any funds from the general fund. Next is the community rec center. Community Rec Center is proposed for an increase of $79,795, and the proposed increase from the general fund is $28,272. The debt service fund is proposed for an increase of $1,744,674, and this is again associated with year one of the bans. This is an estimated cost of year one of construction on this high school project, which we're assuming right now would be we'd be borrowing about $62 million. Cost on the bands would be $1,850,000. We are proposing the use of fund balance from the debt service fund of $682,735. So the net increase to this fund would be $1,167,265. The Water Enterprise Fund is proposed for an increase of $97,875. The Wastewater Fund is proposed for an increase of $269,058. And Solid Waste is proposed for an increase of $78,842. And finally, the school department is proposed for an increase of $128,846. That looks like it was from their budget. The school budget is made up from a few things. They're going down, it looked like, a little bit in state aid, but they also have miscellaneous local revenue going up as well as investment income going up, making up their increase of $128,846. And finally, we put this slide in. This has been talked about throughout the budget process. So again, I worked with my counterpart from the school department on this to obtain the numbers and go over this. The one thing, again, I clarified when this slide was shown before, we did not get clarification from RIDE which date, because I know the schools have to report dates on enrollment at a few different times. So this will fluctuate. I believe the date, the information I had obtained from Ryan, this was from an October enrollment dates. They were showing a reduction of 91 students, which result in a possible allowance of reduced funding of $2.1 million.
All right, thank you, Brian. Questions from council members? Go ahead, jump in.
I just wanted to make sure that everyone had taken a look at Brian's email over the weekend. If you wanted me to print it, I was happy to print one, get it for you. You're all good? Okay.
All right,
For now.
all right, we can dive right in. Go ahead.
Brian, I've got a couple of questions for you. Going back to the tangible property tax, you said that it's rate locked. Can you explain that a little bit?
I'll do my best. That's more of a Wendy question, but I'll do my best. When the state adopted their change last year, we're not collecting as much, and there's an exemption for the first, I believe, 50,000 on tangible taxes. And now the state is reimbursing the town directly for that. By doing so, that rate locked all tangible taxes throughout the state at whatever was adopted in the current fiscal year. So tangible will remain the same at 1105 going forward.
So for tangible as opposed to real property, it's going to stay at 1105 and not be reduced as a
Correct.
result of the revaluation to 904.
Correct.
Okay.
Let me, and I gotta tell you, considering we've never had more than one rate in this town, all the tax documents we have, that was messing with me so bad, because I was putting all the information in and I couldn't get it to work because tangible is now at 1105, but side note, that was driving me crazy for a while.
And I had one other question. When Jim was reading out the numbers off the proposed staffing changes, the figure that I've got on slide 4 for the 2 paramedics is 183, and I thought Jim said 198.
That was an earlier amount, it is 183.
It is
That was-
183.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
All right, I got a few questions I'm going to dive into here. I want to talk about some of these positions here. Number one, the 2 EMS positions. Those are funded through the general fund, or those are funded through the EMS billing fund? Can you clarify that?
They are funded through the general fund. How we are approaching it this year, the positions are funded from the general fund within the EMS department. And how this works is we do a transfer from the EMS billing fund to the general fund to offset EMS related expenses. So within our current year's budget, FY '24-25, the transfer is adopted at $1 million. What's being proposed within the budget for next year is an increase to $1.1 million, offsetting $100,000 of this $183,000 increase.
So if we wanted to use the EMS billing fund to fully absorb the costs related to these 2 employees, would that work or not work?
Within the current fiscal year, actually, I believe even last fiscal year, I believe FY '24, I think we collected about $1.2 million. And in talking to Craig, between when the new rescue does come online, we'll have that many more rescues in service. The council just took action recently, increasing the billing amounts. I believe there is room for growth there, but certainly 1.2 million to cover this, yes.
So if we wanted to add these positions using the EMS billing fund to take away any tax impact by adding these 2 positions, could that be accomplished through this budget?
Yes.
All right, great. That's something I'd like to see done. I also want to ask about this park maintenance position. I know it's got, if we add, it's got about 96,000 impact, but if we exclude it, there's a request that we hire temporary work, which would equate to about 72,000. So the net effect, even if we excluded this, would be in addition to the budget of about 72,000. Can you talk about that?
Yes, and actually, I was working off of that when I sent the email on Saturday. Terry did get me updated numbers because I was going off of what was adopted in the current year. She's since said that the hourly rate that they pay to seasonal employees has increased, so it would actually go up a little bit. But yes, when this position was requested, the cost to add this new position is $96,000, and the plan was to reduce seasonal salaries, and it was reduced by $72,000 from what was adopted in the current year. It's my understanding they've had a hard time filling the positions, so this would alleviate that. So that the net impact in adding this position is approximately $24,000 because of the reduction in seasonal.
Okay. So if we wanted to fund this parks maintenance position, is that funded through the general fund in this budget?
Yes, 100%.
Okay. If we wanted to fund that through a fund of the rec department, is that a possibility?
I'm sorry?
If we were to use a fund other than the general fund, specifically a fund inside the recreation department to fund that new position, is that a possibility under this budget? And the purpose of the question is to find funds, not the general fund, such that we wouldn't rely on increasing taxes to raise revenue to fund the position.
I brought that. Did you want that?
Well, it's a question of Brian. I don't need to review that. If no, that's fine. If the recommendation is no on that.
There are side funds to Parks and Recreation, but they are specific to, say, the Guild or Recreation or Senior Services. This position would be doing is a park maintenance technician, so I don't believe so.
Okay. All right. I want to ask you a few more questions. You want to jump in first?
Can I just
Go
follow,
ahead.
just because I had my suggestion, I like where you're going with the EMS, but I just had a question. My thought would be, I didn't think about how it would be funded, but what if we onboarded one person in July and put one person in January? There would be sort of some savings. I like Rory's idea of funding it through EMS as well, but maybe does the staggered start of those 2 positions help? And a follow-up to, you can think, one sec, and then a follow-up to the parks position. If that position becomes available on July 1, we're already sort of recruiting for park seasonal workers or not, and like, are we likely to get someone to start on July 1? I don't want to hurt the parks in their busy season by trying to hire someone. If, I don't know, I'm not a hiring person, so I don't understand how it all works. I just don't want to hurt them in their busiest time.
So the rec department, Terry Murphy is at a rec meeting right now, otherwise she would be here. But from what I understand, and it is true, that these seasonal workers are very tough to come by, and we're paying a premium for them, and some leave early, some start late, so it has been very difficult to hold on to good seasonal workers. So that is why that position was going to be a full-time position, because obviously it's a full-time job. There was someone is required to come to work every day. But there are major challenges. If you back up why that position's there was a half position in facilities and a half position in rec that was shared. But what we found was facilities was getting overrun with the amount of work they were doing. So we shifted that position into a full-time facilities, which opened a position, in rec that we have had difficulty in the past. So I hope that answers your question.
I think it does. And also, we did talk about like cemetery maintenance. Is that something that this person in this position would be assisting with, or is that not in this budget any longer?
It's not. We would have to, at least for one more year, try and find funds to maintain those 8 cemeteries that we currently maintain.
Okay. Those are my only 2 related to that, so I know I've already spoken, so I can wait again.
All right, I got a few questions on the revenue side. Slide 5, we talk about estimated net assessed value. If we can go to that just to take a look. I know that we see a large increase, and a majority of that, if not all, is related to the new assessments. Now, I also want to ask, is there any growth, natural growth included in this increase here?
That's probably more of a question for Wendy. I'm sorry, I'm not sure on that. They're still working through these numbers, and they will be ever changing until the June 13th date. I'm not sure if that.
All right, so we're unsure if that figure there is just the increase in the assessments or also includes growth in the form of new development that's come on.
I'm sorry, there's definitely growth in there. I don't know what the percent is or what the amount is. I just have the total amounts. I should have clarified that. I just don't know what amount right now is associated with growth.
Now, is there sort of like okay, this is just the current year based on the revaluation, but is there like a rate of growth we can anticipate in the next fiscal year such that we'll have an increase in revenue from that? Typically we have some growth naturally. Yes. Can you talk to that?
In recent years, we've been averaging between 40 and 45 million in growth.
Okay. So there's potential that the revenue related to the property tax could be conservative, in that potentially we could have growth that outpaces what our anticipated revenue is there?
For next year?
For next year.
I would say the numbers are far from final, and they're going to continue to change. I don't know if that's not, I think we have growth in there. I think they're just continuing to change, and it would not surprise me to have this number change when the town assessor sets the levy in June. It will absolutely still continue to change, and it probably will continue to grow. I don't know by how much, and when I say grow, I'm not referring to the growth. We do have growth in there. It's just they are still working on the numbers.
And what's the rate of growth that you include in the revenue for the real estate taxes? You must include a certain increase year to year every time you do a budget, yeah?
Until I got assessed values from our town assessor, I was backing into the number that we needed to balance the budget just using our prior year's assessments and keeping it under the 4% cap. So
okay.
Yeah.
All right, can we jump to slide 11?
Mm-hmm.
We talked a little bit about revenue from investments before. Markets currently have been down as of the last month or so, but I want to get some clarity. Does the revenue from investments represent dividends and interest, or does it also include appreciation in stock? Last time we had a meeting, you discussed that there are not investments in stock such that we wouldn't be subject to market declines.
There are. And
there are investments in stock.
I apologize for that. I was thinking more The bulk of what we have for investments in that regard is the school trust and things of that nature, but we do have some funds as well that are in stocks. It's
Okay.
a smaller percentage, but we do have some. I looked at
Okay.
that the next day, yeah.
I want to talk also, go ahead.
Just before you move off that, I want to make sure I understand. The investments that we have in stocks are related to the school trust funds?
We
Or-
have investments related to that, but we also have some of our endowment funds are trusts, are stocks as well.
Some of our what?
Our endowment funds, some of the various funds.
Endowments,
are-
okay,
yes.
yeah.
And that would be included in the general fund revenue? Any amounts included in this trust fund or endowment fund?
Any revenues that are associated with the general fund, yes.
And those two funds are associated with the general fund, the trust fund and the endowment fund?
The trusts are not.
Okay, so those amounts exclude the amounts from the trust, which is where the stocks are. So this is really just dividends and
Yes.
interest?
The bulk of it, yes.
Okay, all right, good.
When you say school trust funds, you mean those funds primarily is the Guild Fund, with is about 22 million, and 7 or 8 other funds that are about $2 million, right?
That's correct.
So, because it's a misnomer to the public when they say school
Yes.
trust funds. So if anyone was thinking it was school money, it's just school, mostly for the Guild.
Correct,
So it doesn't really, and it can only be used for the Guild.
correct.
So it's not money that we can scoop and move. Understood. Do we want to talk about any positions that we might not?
Yeah, one last
Want
thing I do
that?
before we get there. I want to ask about the anticipated budget surplus, revenues in excess of expenditures. You anticipate a budget surplus of about 1.2 million.
Correct.
Is that conservative? Are we pretty close on point? We're about 9 months through the fiscal year now.
It's fairly conservative,
So potentially we could see a little bit higher than that.
yes.
Okay.
One thing that's factored in there right now, when we've had people separate from the town, we've had them pay out of the general fund. They're paid out of their operating budgets. We have a reserve for that fund. We
Is
could
that
move those.
uncompensated absences?
Yes.
Okay.
So some of those funds could be shifted there. Problem being, if we do that, then by year end, we'll have to do a year-end transfer to replenish that as well. So it's kind of not much of a net change, but that's a place where we could have the surplus of the general fund could grow, but then we'd probably have to replenish that fund, so.
And that's going to bring me directly to the fund balance on slide 12. So we're looking at the audited fund balances of fiscal year ended '24, which is the year ended last year. Now, 18.46% of the operating budget, so we're above that 10% to 17% sort of guideline there.
Yes.
But there has been some transfers out of the general fund since fiscal year ended '24. Can you talk about those?
Oh, they were reflected in this.
They're all reflected in
Yes,
this?
yes.
So that balance at the end of fiscal year '24?
Yes.
That includes that?
Yes, that is as of 6/30/2024, what it was. Yes.
Okay, so that $1.2 million surplus anticipated in the current fiscal year, less out any compensated absences, which we just discussed, will increase this unassigned fund balance even further.
Yes, but we're also within the FY '25-26 budget, we're proposing the use of $1,550,000 of fund balance.
Toward the debt service?
Towards the operating
General.
budget, yeah,
Toward the operating budget?
yes,
Okay.
1.5 million, 1.55?
yes.
Good.
Just a quick question about tangible property. Could you just kind of review what that is for me?
Again?
Again? No, the definition of tangible property, because I'm thinking of it from the tangible property tax that was eliminated from certain businesses, so
Yep.
I'm not quite sure what this is.
So that's exactly what that is. This is associated with basically equipment from businesses and things of that nature.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Can I ask one more question on the fund balance? After that amount in fiscal year ended '24 is reduced to account for the $1.55 million that is transferred into this operating budget, what percentage of the unassigned fund balance are we looking at as compared to the operating budget? Can you quantify that?
Not really yet, because that would be the surplus of the FY '24, '25, what are we in right now? '24, '25, against the adopted budget for '25, '26, which we don't have yet. So
Okay.
it's two
Too far in
numbers
the
we don't
future?
have yet.
Okay. All right. We'll start talking about some of these positions.
I got one more.
Go ahead.
While we're on fund balance, just one more question. Somewhere in one of the presentations, it was either you or Jim, talked about the percentage and policy, or it might have even been in your memo, I'm not sure, that the council adopted a policy back in 2010 or 11 to keep between 10 and 17%
That's correct.
as unassigned fund balance. But it seems to me somewhere in all of our discussions, there was also talk about a need at some point, and I think it has to do with the debt service and the borrowing for the high school, that it should, maybe it's the GFOA standard that I'm thinking of, that it jumps up to 25 to 35%.
There's a few, so you're correct. The town has a policy between 10 and 17%. GFOA recommends 2 months, so that's approximately 16 and change, 16.33, I think. And Moody's, for rating, when rating communities and who are AA, they recommend for AA communities to be between 25 and 35%. And that will make up 20% of approximately of our eventual bond rating.
Is there any suggestion on how we're supposed to go from 17% to 25 to 35?
It's no.
Okay.
Are there towns in municipalities in Rhode Island who have that?
Not that I'm aware of.
Right, so I think it's too high up, it's too lofty of a,
I know, but I remember seeing, either hearing it or
Yep.
seeing it in one of the memos, and it just
Yeah.
occurred to me as something worth pursuing, because I don't see us getting that.
No.
And I don't know of any town that does.
No, I think the goal is just to hang on as well we can to what we have as part of our presentation when we do make that presentation to Moody's.
All right, thank you, Brian.
so we know, what, we
Wanna
want to
talk
talk
about-
about positions?
Yeah.
So we know that Colleen Camp, executive assistant, is retiring. She has taken on a lot of duties recently, expanded duties regarding social media. It looks great. There's tons of stuff on stories on Instagram and Facebook, so that's great. But she's leaving. There's 2 positions, the grant writer and the communications director, that we could talk about collapsing into an expanded executive assistant / director of communications. So that makes sense to me. I think, especially if you're bringing someone new on, you could definitely get that skill set all together.
Yep,
We could
agreed.
save a little.
Yeah, absolutely.
Is there anybody who doesn't want to do that, to eliminate those 2?
No,
I
we're
would-
all on board with that.
Yeah.
We're all good?
Yeah, I think it's a great idea. I think that the new position that is condensed will carry on the great legacy that Colleen has been doing for the town. So I think that would be a great decision.
So
I think, just to add in, I don't have a problem eliminating the communications manager position or grant writer and somehow reallocating that executive assistant position, but I don't want to create a false expectation. I don't know that grant writer is going to fit easily into that
No, it will not.
single
No.
position.
It won't, and I'll just go over that. I would support your recommendation, though. So the Colleen is retiring after 35 years, and this is a great, and she's done a real good job with what she's been tasked with social media and so forth and so on. But there is an area that we really want to expand on, is multimedia, social media, and notifications of meetings and stuff, and we have made a lot of progress towards that. That was one of the main jobs of the communications person. But it is possible. We looked at, I did some research in North Kingstown, which has a great model for a person that is the executive assistant to the manager and a multimedia social media manager. And it's one position, and it accomplishes both. A lot has changed in that 30-something years that Colleen's been here, and social media obviously has really taken off. So, but as far as a grant writer, that's a totally different skill set. I think we can take that one out, and the reason is the grants we've gotten in the past several years have diminished greatly, and I don't foresee the volume of grants or the opportunities for those grants that were in every corner for the past few years. So we could take that out right now and just apply for the ones like, we have a deadline on the 21st, I believe, for the congressional earmark grants. Those are still around, and we'll be pushing hard to get some of those. But there's been a lot less activity in the area of grants. So I think that I would support you taking that one out as well.
So,
Sounds good.
We're all on board with that.
that's fine. So what do you think about the EMS? There's a couple ways to do it. We could stagger, like, I think we don't want to shock in a year and add 6, but we don't want to,
Is there any benefit in hiring both of them at the same time for training purposes?
Well, Chief Craig Stanley's here, and he could probably answer that best. Once again, just to reiterate, we're opening a new facility in 1 year, which was sorely needed in this town. They'll require eight EMS personnel to staff 24/7, and that is our ultimate goal. But Craig, I'll turn it over to you as far as to answer that question.
before Craig starts, it's going to open in March, or is it going to open in July?
Of next year?
Yeah.
Well, I don't have the exact date, but I'm hoping it's a year from now. But we haven't even stuck a shovel in the ground yet, so let's
I
see
know,
where that
and
is.
so it just echoes of the high school project, and I just feel like,
This is EMS. I mean, I can't really compare the two, so.
well, it's still construction, it's still a building.
It's a really hard time right now for construction.
So that's why I'm just curious about if it's going to open in July, do you need 2 people? I guess we need to hear from you. When do we need 2 people in the hybrid start or whatever?
Yeah, and to answer your question, we're hiring paramedics, so there's no training on there. They're already paramedics. They would go through their normal orientation before whatever. But we anticipate the station to be completed based on talking to the contractors of March of next year. So that's when we would open that station and run it full time with the personnel. We have the 2, and then 2 we're proposing in July, and then that would leave the rest until next fall.
As an operational matter, would it make more sense to do orientation for 2 people once instead of having a staff person do 2 separate orientations with 2 new employees?
No, we're pretty flexible with that. I mean, yeah. I mean, we're flexible as far as hiring, whether we hire 2 or 4 or 6. It's really irrelevant for that.
Okay.
Can you give us some updates on anything that you've heard from the construction company regarding when the shovel is going to go in the ground? Do we know that, Jim, or?
I believe construction is going to start within the next 2 weeks. Luke, would that be?
I think we were at a meeting where somebody said there's going to be fenced off. Wasn't this you?
Yeah, it was me.
Okay.
So contractor's getting going. It is getting fenced off. We're mobilizing now. It will be delivered in 1 year, hopefully within that. And we'll be having a groundbreaking ceremony next month. We're going to be arranging that. So it's on track.
Okay. Right, so it was the meeting where he said they're delineating what's the land trust and what's going to be the EMS site.
Right, I think I may have missed that one, but I'm
Sorry.
I'm glad that we're on track. That makes me feel very, at least happy about that.
Yeah, and I'm not intimately involved in the construction of the school, but this station is relatively a small project, and you look at the grand scheme of construction projects.
So I guess the question is, do you need 2 to start in July? Do you need 2 to start in January? Do you want 1 and 1?
Well, I think of the impact on the budget, I think as we talked about of 2 now, and then as we stagger that, I think the impact would be less as if we wait until 6, next year.
I I definitely want to put 2 on by next July, but I just didn't know if,
Yeah, and
Just trying
really,
to
the other
save-
side of the coin for that is hiring those 2 is they can backfill
Yeah.
and reduce overtime. So I'm looking for realized savings and economy of scale of hiring those 2, backing off the overtime. I mean, we'll put them right in circulation. They won't be sitting. They'll be filling shifts.
yeah.
All right, well, that's really good to know, because if we can,
Yeah.
experience some savings
Yeah.
on overtime, then that would make it worthwhile
Because I
to.
think we have several things that are going. One, the revenue, they projected $1.5 million in revenue for the next fiscal year. That was before you just approved us to raise the rates. So that 1.5 does not include that. So I would anticipate that the revenue would be more.
So there's 2 FTEs here. Next year in March, hopefully, knock on wood, luck of the Irish, that it opens up, right? And we need 8 EMTs full-time there, right?
Yeah, we have 2 already.
Yep.
We'll have 2 in July, and then that will leave the rest staggered out over the year if we decide to do that towards after the, in the fall of next year.
So 4
So
more,
4.
Chief?
Yeah, we need a total of 8.
Yep.
So we'll have 2, then 2 in July, and then
4
another
more in the
4,
future.
correct.
I think I'd be in favor of doing the 2 tonight, but I would be willing to listen to my colleagues about how we should go forward, because it's my first budget to be voting on, so.
I'm in favor of the 2 tonight. In light of the increased rates that you say should reflect an increase in revenue from the anticipated 1.5, it's an easier case to have the EMS billing fund absorb the costs for these 2 positions, such that we could have less reliance on the general fund. You agree with that?
I do.
All right.
So you're going to fund these positions out of the,
Under the EMS billing fund and not through the general fund.
can you do that?
It would, and so how that would work is, the position's already in the general fund on the expense side of the budget. Currently, we have 1.1 million budgeted on the revenue side for EMS billing revenue. That would just have to be upped by the amount needed to offset the total cost of the 2 positions, another 83,000.
So by doing that, less reliance on the general fund, so to speak here, that would reduce the tax rate? Am I correct on that?
Yes,
Okay, that's what we're trying to accomplish, just
Yes.
want to clarify.
yep.
Okay, great.
Every 85 is a penny, so,
It'd be 2 and change.
yep, that's 2, and then the other
250 is 3.
2.5.
We're now at
We're a
$8.99.
nickel, yep, $8.99.
All right.
I think that's a great idea, Mr. President.
All right, thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
All right, how we feel about the park maintenance? We want to talk it out. Really not much of a financial impact one way or the other. Seems to be a clear need by Parks and Rec. I'm good with it. Any thoughts?
I thought Terry made the case, that position, my plan was to leave that alone. I think the 2 EMTs in the Parks position, for 3 out of the 5 that they were looking at, with the 1 net loss, I think makes sense.
All right, any other thoughts on that?
I just think I'm fine to keep it in. My worry is about the cemetery maintenance that we heard all last term, impassioned pleas about caring for the cemeteries in general. So we need to have some sort of a plan. This person cannot help with that, correct?
They could help, but the plan would require more FTEs to hire for the cemeteries. So we're going to do the best we can and try and get some private contractors to come in for at least 1 more year at a rate where we could pay them to do it. But in all these positions, Parks and Rec, facilities and so forth, they're maxed out. I see them every day. They're doing the best they can. To take on additional responsibility requires additional people, especially to maintain 8 cemeteries. So we had a plan, we had to modify it a little. We're trying to keep this budget as lean as possible, and that's why I'd like to figure it out 1 more year on how we can get these cemeteries done without hiring additional FTEs or new vehicles and so forth and so on.
Exactly.
And that's the 8 that we technically have responsibility for.
That's correct.
You know the number better than I do.
Well,
269?
There's a lot. There's like 100 we can actually find, and there's over 200 and change that are in the town, and even more when you count the smaller ones that are in woodlots that have been overgrown.
Not registered.
That's correct.
But sometimes the complaints that we get when people come in are about essentially orphan cemeteries. Nobody's got responsibility for them at this point.
That's correct.
And I'd be concerned about
I know.
increasing our responsibility
I know.
voluntarily, because it also comes with liability.
I know, but you have to agree, it's very sad. Like, it stirs you at your emotional level when people come in and say, these are my ancestors and family plots, and they're a mess.
Mr. O'Mani, have you, Have we considered ever using outside help to take care of these cemeteries? Maybe, focusing on reaching out to our local scout groups that may need Eagle Scout projects or Silver Star projects that,
We've talked about that, and it's massive, and then there was a bee issue and a
So that,
briar issue and a...
we have thought about that, and that was one of the first things we thought about, but Councilmember Bergen is correct. There's a lot of liability that goes with that. You're using chainsaws, mowers. There was one cemetery that was infested with bees coming from the ground.
Wasps
So
or
there's
something,
a
yeah.
tremendous liability that comes with that. And they tried it in the past, and it just didn't work. People do it once and they never show up again because it's bulwark. It's not easy to do it. So
It's mowing,
I think
weeding.
we have a plan for this year to do the basic maintenance that we can, and then we'll reevaluate it for next year, see where we are.
thanks.
I think that sounds like a really good idea. I think definitely this is not the year to expand. I think that we all, and I appreciate you doing the best that you can and the staff doing the best they can with what we're working with. So thank you.
So before the meeting, I just asked Jim a couple questions. I was curious because I know people are very concerned about road maintenance, and we didn't really hear from Rich which roads we can anticipate being paved. I know there was a big kerfuffle about Kingston Road around the library, and the state's going to do that, but I just wanted Jim to report out, and I think he talked to Rich to see which roads were on the list for this year, so people could anticipate and the public would be aware.
So I spoke to Rich Bourbonnais today, and the roads that are slated to be paved in this budget here, with the funds that we have, number one is Old North Road from Flag Road to Stony Fort Road up by URI. Second one is Woodruff Avenue from Robinson to Main Street. Third is Salt Pond Road from Woodruff to Kenyon. Robinson Street, total, we had some funds left over from last year, and James Trail. Those are the ones that are scheduled under, our pavement program. But there's also one that we've been really trying to get Rhode Island DOT to help us out with, and they have. They're gonna do a lot for us on this one, and we're very thankful. They've been very conducive to our request. So they came 2 weeks ago. The deputy director came with his crew, and it's the road from Columbia all the way back, Route 108, really all the way to Spring Street, I believe it was the number one priority, which was about 800 feet, 700 feet. So the DOT is going to accelerate that and get it done as a guarantee that they'll do that this year. I just got an email today that they're very hopeful that the entire 108 is under the traffic improvement plan, and they're trying to accelerate the entire project. So we'll know that within a few weeks. So either it's all going to get done this year, or at a minimum, it'll be the worst part, which is from in front of the Peacedale Library all the way back towards near the entrance, near the YMCA over there, not quite that far.
Yeah. And you said Old North Road from Flag Road to where? I have ST and then I must
Yep, I'll
have.
go over again. It's Old North Road from Flag Road to Stony Fort Road, Woodruff Ave from Robinson to Main Street, Salt Pond Road from Woodruff to Kenyon, Robinson Street, and James Trail.
Someone told me today that they feel like Tuckertown Road is going to wash away, so I haven't driven on that recently, but has anyone traveled that one? Okay.
Wash away from the rain maybe today.
Yeah, well, today, yeah, but no, in general. So, okay, so, and then my other thought was, this isn't, we just had the hospital public hearing about their parking lot, and we're going to coordinate so that we don't rip something up and build something new at the same time.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. They're going to have to work together on this to make sure that, once these roads are down, it's required. You cannot touch them for, I think it's a period of 5 years. Like, you
Right.
can't put utilities or anything else, so there's a lot of planning that goes in. Rich Bourbonnais does a real good job of coordinating that.
All right. Because the new, if there would be new parking for the hospital in that 11 Kenyon, that's right there.
It
It's
is,
on.
yes.
So, okay. Thank you.
All right, any further suggestions on the municipal side of the budget? All right, let's move over to the schools. One thing I want to ask, Brian, is about this West Bay Collaborative Fund. I understand there's a sum of monies sitting there related to healthcare costs. Can you just talk about that?
Yes, so we have a Fund 802 is called the Healthcare Management Fund, and these are, the total in the fund as of June 30th, 2024, our last audit was $682,904. And these funds were the balances that was in the West Bay Collaborative when the town exited West Bay and joined the Rhode Island Interlocal Trust. This wasn't the total amount, I believe. I don't recall which side, either the town or school made a contribution to OPEB, or maybe it was both, made a contribution to OPEB from these funds, and this is the balance that's remaining, the $682,000. Of that amount, approximately $82,000 is related to the town, and $600,000 is related to the school department. It worth noting as well, these funds, again, coming from West Bay and healthcare-related expenses, they are commingled between town and school contributions, and they were employed. Some of them could be as well employee contributions as well, and that's where they really only can be used as associated with healthcare for employees.
I'd just like to expand on that conversation. This is a fund that Brian recognized that could be used to supplement the OPEB fund, but I'll just give you a little more background on it. Many cities and towns had this fund, including Narragansett when I was there years ago. So what it was the healthcare program switched. There was payouts and settlements involved. They were put in a fund. They were encumbered to be used just for other healthcare type of programs. So so Brian found it and determined that of the $680-something thousand, 80-something was left for the town. 600 could be used by the schools. So the plan could be that the school department could withhold their pay-go on the OPEB fund, which is $645,000 this year, and another $48,000 for dental. You could withhold about $600,000 out of those two amounts and supplement it with the West Bay fund that's in there, because it's similar type of programs.
We got a few follow-ups. Can I just jump right in? Yeah. How does the school department access the funds? Would it only be through the town council increasing the property tax transfer? Can we walk through that?
I feel like that would be a question for legal. I'm not sure.
All right, so $600K is sitting there that is school
Yes.
department's funds, can only be used for healthcare costs.
Correct.
If they wanted to tap into it and use it, do they need town council authorization?
I believe so, but that's a legal question, I believe.
Is there a way to transfer them the monies without increasing the property tax transfer?
The council, I mean, just going off a record, when other funds get transferred between funds, that is by council action. So that's where I'm assuming this would be by council action. Similar to our year-end transfers, when funds go from, say, the general fund to some other fund, it's by council action. We haven't dealt with this fund before, but so I would like to check with legal, but yes, I would assume by council action, these funds could get moved.
And a transfer of these funds would be reflected in the budget as an increase in the property tax transfer. If you don't know that, that's okay. I just want to get that clear. That's kind of something we'd like get clarity on before we do
Yeah.
that.
I'm not sure how the inner workings would go on it. It could certainly happen. I'm just not sure how to dot the i's on this yet or cross the t's.
Okay, good.
If I can get a clarification on a couple of points. The fund isn't being actively used now. You don't contribute towards it from the school or the state side, town side, because you're not in it anymore. You've got OPEB, the trust, for health expenses.
The only thing that I've seen this fund be used for in the 3 years is funding the annual, actually biannual OPEB valuation report.
Okay.
That's it.
So if we were to use this, it's essentially a one-time shot. There won't be funds left after that because nothing's going into the fund.
Right. So going forward, we'd have to fund that valuation report out of the operating budget, yes.
Okay.
Well, we should take our 82 for our town and move it into our healthcare costs and save another penny.
Yes. Could we do that, Brian? Could we do that through this budget? Go ahead.
That'd be the same question for legal on how it gets done, but I would assume
Okay.
yes.
See, I mean,
Yeah.
But if we have to spend it on health expenses and we're already at 150% on the OPEB, what are we spending it on?
Presently, both the town and the school department contribute they fund their retiree health insurance out of their operating budgets on a pay-go basis. So we're not touching the OPEB fund for those expenses. And this would be, now we'd be transferring these funds into the general fund. So on the revenue side, where you saw the operating transfers in, this would be another transfer in. I think that's how it would work, where we do an operating transfer in from this fund to the general fund as a revenue, and the expenses would stay the same. So we just increase revenue by this. I think that's how it would work.
Thank you.
And what's the annual amount of the town's expenses related to the healthcare that this could be utilized to offset? I guess what's the amount in this budget?
Right. Approximately 450, 500,000 for retiree health.
All right. And what's the amount that the school department spends through their operating budget toward healthcare-related costs?
645, it might be 646 for retiree health, and then another 48,000 for retiree dental.
All right, so if we did this, that would free up $600K of cash for them. But we're unsure if we could do it through this budget?
Just the mechanics of it. I
Okay.
believe how it would go would be transferring, an operating transfer in for revenue, and the expenses would stay the same. And I think how we'd transfer in, if we're gonna do the town side as well, we transfer in the full 682 and the operating transfer in for revenue. 82 of that would stay on the town side to offset some town expenses, and you'd increase an operating transfer out to the school department for their operating expenses, I believe.
So it would likely result in an increase in the property tax transfer? The amount of the appropriation to the schools?
No, we wouldn't do
No?
it. No,
Oh,
I wouldn't
okay.
do it as,
All right.
I wouldn't think we'd be, no.
Okay. Well, I'm open to this.
I think we need more information, but yeah, I mean, it seems silly to not use it that way. I mean, they
And
have
when-
to use it
Seems
for
like a
some,
really-
it's
how
their
long has it
money, they
been-
have to use it for something,
And how long has this been sitting there, the school portion untouched?
since we switched to the trust.
Which
Yeah,
was
I
how
believe
long
it
ago?
was- I believe it was 2017, 2018, in that time frame.
Okay.
This is a really fortunate thing, I think, for us to discover tonight. So I'm very grateful for it.
All right, so that 82K will allow us to come down another set.
What's your goal? Bring
Huh?
it down, your brand, keep going, bringing it down?
Well, I'm just talking out loud here. You want to talk more about the schools? Do you have any thoughts over
Yeah,
here?
I mean, we can talk about how you feel about field maintenance, the crossing guard, the,
What page are we
I don't know, that was their budget meeting.
Brian, can you talk a little bit about the shared services, the
Yeah.
309,000 the school department had requested the town absorb? Can you
Page
sort of
what?
talk through the different shared services there?
7. Page 7? Oh, this is page 8. Yep.
So within the school's budget, they had a total of the shared services at $309,830. That is associated with $73,885 for the resource officers, $67,870 for crossing guards, $527 for field maintenance, $31,679 for tax software, and $39,869 for computer services, for again, the total of $309,830.
All right, any questions for Brian on that one?
I don't have any questions. I mean, I feel like those are school expense items. It's hard for me to say they can come back over on the municipal side, but I'm open to hearing what anyone else thinks about those.
Go ahead.
I spent some time taking a look at these 5 line items, and this is from page 7 of the school department's presentation to us from last week. And we have 3 very smart accountants in the room, and I'm not, but Carol. To me, A and B, the school resource officers and the crossing guards, make sense as a school department expense because those are unique to the schools. We wouldn't, the police department, Chief Moynihan, wouldn't have those positions in his budget at all if we didn't have a need for them at the schools. But the field maintenance, the tax software, and that's why I asked the question specifically about the tax software to Ryan when he was here Thursday night, and the computer services. Those are all services that the town needs, engages, uses, whether we had schools or not. The fields would still need to be mowed. The tax software, the reevaluation program still needs to be done. And tagging them for the computer services, while they have their own IT department, I can understand there was discussion about former town manager Alfred parsing this out as a way of sort of carving out what the town does and what department it goes to. And most of the time, I think that makes sense. I am comfortable with items C, D, and E essentially not being billed, for lack of a more sophisticated term, to the school department. I think the school resource officers and the crossing guards, because they're unique to the school department, it makes sense from an accounting point of view, or at least a layman's understanding of accounting, that those would be billed to the school department. But that would be, without the school resource officers and the crossing guards, that would essentially be a credit to the school department. If you give me 1 second, I added it up to $168,075. I'd be comfortable with that. I'm open to hearing what the rest of the council thinks about the other 2 positions.
So the way I understood the fields,
Sorry.
it's the mowing of Hazard and Curtis Corner. The town already mows all the other fields that they use. So when they practice for soccer or lacrosse, we're already maintaining all of that at no charge, right? They're only getting billed for those 2 fields. That's the
But-
way I heard it.
Hazard.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not exclusive, and this is a different discussion that we've had about building the school there, which Brad Shear pointed out Thursday night isn't going to be an issue, at least for several years, as we're doing the construction. But that property under the, give me the right name, Land and Water Conservation Grant that we got in the 1970s.
Parks?
No, it's not parks. The town took a grant in the 70s
Oh, the
saying that
interior or
we'd
something.
maintain that, and that's what the whole thing about the swap was in building the school. So if the school wasn't there, we would still have the obligation to maintain that field. That's what I was talking about. And the same thing with Curtis Corner, less so, but now they've turned the school over to us. So it's now a town property as well.
So that was my future question to Jim is about the turning over of the schools, because there's some discussion and some misinformation about the schools and the town and the keys. So I'll ask you about it for Monday, but I'll formally ask the question. I don't see it that way. I think that we maintain a lot of other fields for them, like Old Mountain Field, what they use for baseball and all of those things, tennis, we do all of that. It's just a way to cover some of their usage.
But it's not exclusive to the schools. That was the point. I was trying to focus in on what's unique to the schools, what is the town doing anyway? And the natural break point for me was the school resource officers and the crossing guards.
Do you want to go first?
I don't, you can go first. I just had a quick question about the tax software with the apportionment, as it has been done. Will that present any problems with, does anybody else get a portion of this on their budget, the tax software, or is it just the two of us? Wastewater?
I believe some of the enterprise funds will use it as well, and they get a charge as well.
Does Kingston Fire and UFD use it? Because your property valuation, your tax is based on the, no?
I'm not sure.
I would be interested in knowing exactly who else had that in their budget, because I think if we do this on this side, then we sort of open ourselves up for it on all the other sides. So I just would be curious.
And the computer piece, if you can go back through that again, they're using our IT architecture, our services, what are they doing?
That is a portion of the wages and benefits for the town's IT director.
So I might have a little bit of a different perspective as far as the resource officer. We have one, right, at our high school? Two.
One,
Right, okay. So I think resource officers are necessary. I think they're a great way to acclimate students to dealing with police officers in the future, and I think that's an important thing. Look, if you were going to start over and place police officers in a mock town, you would place one at a school to protect our schools. And I think that if we're going to eat any of the money on that, I think that the resource officer position is the one that we should eat it on, because it only makes sense to me that the town does pay for keeping our schools safe. I understand the arguments against it, us paying for it, it's a school expense, but really keeping our students safe is a town expense, and that's why I would be comfortable with taking up that financial burden, or not financial burden, but the price on that. And I'm happy to hear my colleagues' thoughts on my comments.
Any thoughts here? I'm open to shifting some of these shared services to the municipal side of the budget, but whatever that amount is, I would like to see an increase in the amount of the transfer from the unassigned fund balance to the operating budget, such that we don't have to have a tax increase related to the shifting of these shared service expenses.
I just want to confirm, are we speaking about all of these or just the resource officer?
I'm just speaking generally, we haven't decided which
Okay.
ones yet, but I'm saying, in my opinion, whatever amount that we decide makes sense to shift over, I'd like to see that it increase the unassigned fund balance transferred to the operating budget to offset this increase, such that there is no tax increase related to this shifting. Does that make sense, Brian? Okay.
Understood.
Any thoughts?
Do you want to go first, Councilwoman Berger?
isn't that what people say, just create some structural deficit, so then we'll always be drawing that additional?
Well, we got a anticipated budget surplus of 1.2 million, which we believe is conservative, so it really tap into some of that increased unassigned fund balance. That's really the only way I would agree to some of the shift of shared services expenses, Because I would not like to see all the progress we got, bringing the tax rate down to $8.98 to go right back up because we're agreeing to absorb some of these expenses. I see no problem absorbing some of these with an offset being the increase in the use of the unassigned fund balance. But, I don't know if I'm open to the full 309 here.
So if the 600,000 from the West Bay gets transferred, ideally not through an increase in maintenance of effort, that's what I sound like, here's like the goal, right?
Yeah. I refer
Right?
to it as the property tax transfer, but yes.
Right, so if that 6 goes over, you're looking, their deficit is,
2.
right,
So we could do, I think what Jay said about the SRO officer sort of could be maybe on our side, and I'd be okay with the field maintenance too, because we're doing the others, and that would get us to 768, I think, which they want 8, but I'm just afraid with the tax software that we're gonna open ourselves up.
I feel like the school resource officer and the crossing guard are school things. And if they're getting 6, they have more than enough to pick up those 2. Because we can anticipate, much like the town is gonna have a surplus, they're likely to have a surplus. Odds are, 4 out of 7, the odds are they'll have a surplus. And they can make up some of the pieces that the 6 doesn't cover. You're talking they only have to come up with 309. And it seems like some
It
people.
would be like 209 though, right? Or actually 200,
Right, pretty much.
or 209, yeah.
Which is very doable. Very, very doable.
So I think I agree with Mike's initial thoughts on this shared service. If we're going to look at any of them, I think C, D, and E, either all 3 or any combination thereof. I think the school resource officer and the crossing guards are certainly services used by the schools necessary. That's why it makes sense to sort of keep them on that side of the budget. I really don't see an instance where they would have to remove those such that we'll be in a position where we said, we should have shifted them such that we could have controlled whether to keep those or not. I think those are safe, but I think C, D, and E, C, D, and E, or any combination thereof makes sense to me as to move if we're going to shift any of them. So I'm open to that. But
So-
again, with the offset being an increase in the transfer from the unassigned fund balance.
So let's
Go ahead.
talk about field maintenance, because it's Hazard Field, right? And so if the high school goes under construction at the end of the year, July, August, whatever, no one's using that, no one's mowing it. So do we want to just make an adjustment? Would you want us to say half it? And because then they were basically just maintaining just Curtis Corner. The town is billing them for Curtis Corner. And because Hazard is not operational,
So is the field maintenance for this item going to go down? Do we project that going down? Do we know the answer to that? Such that even if we moved it to our books, it would really be 0 for an interim period of time?
The number I got from Terry these numbers that you're seeing as part of the school's budget, these are all the adopted amounts from the current fiscal year. They weren't reflecting the new amounts for next year. The new amount that I received from Terry Murphy was actually 101,000, so it actually went up slightly.
I just want to say that while I respect my colleague's opinion about the SRO being a school problem, SROs are school problems until they're not, and until there's an emergency and they become a town problem because our residents in our high school or our middle school are affected. And so that's why, for me, it's more of a town issue, because we're just keeping an eye on our most precious resource, which is not water, which we have a lot of, but it's our students, it's our children. So that's all I want to say about that.
We're not talking about cutting the positions. This is
I know,
just
but
an
what I'm
account-
saying is that the town, Mike, can pay for it, and pay for it because I think it's a town thing. I mean, it's not just the school district dealing with the SRO. It's all of our our
Right.
parents. That's all.
It can only come from the police department.
Mhm.
And I get that. I'm just trying to look at the 5 positions or 5 credited services that the school department brought to us as a proposal for additional support without increasing the actual transfer. Of those, in my head, I can see a distinct difference between what is billed to the schools for the school resource officers and the crossing guards as opposed to these other items. And frankly, what I'm looking for here is some method of a reasonable compromise. Nobody's going to be entirely happy. Hopefully, everybody can live with whatever we come up with.
Thanks.
I think it's logical. I think there's logic here to say those are entirely used, they make logical sense. Maybe Patty's saying the software might not make logical sense. So, I don't know. I don't think anyone here disagrees that keeping the community, the school children and the community safe is important. No one wants to not have that. It's just who should pay for that.
And I hope you all don't think I'm implying that at all. I think,
No.
yeah.
No, it's good. I mean, we all have our passions, so.
All right, any consensus on which one's the shift here? Do we like computer service? That seems like an easy one. We can shift that. All right, let me rephrase. Does anyone up here feel comfortable shifting any of these expenses to the municipal side of the budget?
I feel like field maintenance, but I don't know.
See, that's the one that I feel.
I know.
I feel like that's the one that the school uses and benefits from versus maybe the tax software is a gray zone. But the least, the first three are the most clear that lean toward the school in my head. The other two, you could make a good case for not. So that's where I am at.
How about D&E? That'll bring this up to 670. You get the 600 from West Bay, you get D&E that's 70, 670, it's close to their 809. How do we feel about that?
I can live with this.
I'd like to do a little bit better than that.
Patty, they're going to have a
200, right. And
if there's a surplus, they know they don't have to plug anything. They can flip it into capital projects. That's what I think. Where's Carol? She's not there. Oh, I see.
All right, let me put this in some other terms. If the school department has not funded the 809 they've requested, they anticipate that their fund balance will be $900,000 approximately at the end of fiscal year 25-26, which is the budget we're considering tonight. If we fund them about 670 of that, the ending fund balance of fiscal year 25-26 will be about 1.5 million.
No, because if they get 600,000, they're already they're 500 short. They're asking for 8.
I'm talking about the general fund balance at the end of fiscal year 25-26.
which they're supposed to have between 650 and 1.3 million by statute, right? And so is that what you're saying?
Not
they'll
by
be at-
statute.
Or by whatever, by whoever
GFOA
says.
recommendation.
Their policy.
Right, so they would be at 950, so they would be in the middle point of that range, is that what you're saying?
If we
Or,
give them nothing they ask for, they'll be at 900.
right, I want them to,
If we give them 670, they'll be at 1.5.
oh, okay.
I don't think so.
I
I don't think so.
I just really, I want them to be at that 1.3 level of cash on hand, at least, at the end.
What page?
What page?
27.
I'm just trying to understand. I see what you're adding, 600 to 993, correct?
That's correct.
But they need the 600,000 for this year's budget. So it doesn't have an increase.
So this slide that's not up there shows use of 809 without the town funding that amount.
Taking 809 out of the fund balance. That's what line.
Oh, I see. There you go. Thank you. Understood.
So maybe we have some consensus on D and E, moving those two over to the municipal side. I feel good about that.
It's fine by me.
All right, I feel good about that.
Until,
Feel good about that? D
yeah.
and E? 70? On top of the 600 brings it to 670?
Yeah, I mean,
Okay. All
I
right.
think, like I said, those are the ones that you could make a better case for.
Yeah.
The other things lean more towards school
Okay.
use.
All right. So now, instead of diving right into the human service and outside agencies, we want to open it up for public comment.
So what did we do with C?
We're not shifting it, we're leaving it.
Okay. We're going to leave it?
We're leaving it.
So we're not taking it?
We're not shifting it from the school department's budget to the
I
municipal side.
feel-
We're leaving it as is.
It's,
Okay.
yeah. I mean, I would still, yeah, I would shift it, but it's okay. I understand why we should not shift it.
Okay. We want to dive into the human service and outside agencies now, or do we want to open it up for public comment and then get to this after? What are your thoughts?
I think I prefer public comment.
All right, let's open it up. All right, we're now going to open it up for public comment. We just ask that you introduce yourself. We're going to limit you to 5 minutes. First come, first serve. Go ahead. And can you just turn the microphone on, button on the right?
Tim LaRose. Just a suggestion on this. Why is it a 50-50 split? It seems like you're passionate about switching those resource officers and crossing guards. Why can't you make a compromise and do 75-25 and increase that amount? I mean, it doesn't have to be 50-50. That's just a decision that was made.
It's not 50/50.
It is.
What's the allocation, Brian?
I know the resource officers are 50/50. I'm not sure on crossing guards what the breakdown is.
The resource officers are used 9/12 of the time at the 9 months out of the year at the schools, by the way.
Okay.
Just
Well-
thinking about compromise, but looking for additional funds to transfer, it doesn't have to be, you don't have to do the full amount, it's just what they suggested. So, I mean, you can make a compromise on the amounts as well and say 50-50 or 75-25 or whatever that percentage is, and still leave some of it in there, because that's what the school, school's using it, but I agree with your perspective. One of the things I wanted to comment on is last year's budget for the schools and the fact that you had a balanced budget. I was at the meeting on Thursday when it seemed like you were all surprised about $427,000 that they had to go into general fund last year because of decisions that were made at the state level in June. I mean, that's about the same amount of the $500,000 that they're asking for in the budget. So those things can happen. I'm not necessarily in agreement as to why they didn't come and ask you guys for more money because you had a balanced budget. I hope that doesn't happen again. So that's just a thought there about, the $500,000 that they're asking for to maintain their programs. It pretty much correlates to that $427,000 that they took out of the general fund last year. So just a point to make there. I wanted to make one exception to the town manager's message about the school department and, what the struggle was and, the declining enrollment. There was no mention of the $6.7 million that we pay for outside school, kids to go to other districts or out of district. I think the goal should be, and the focus should be, to get that number down. And by level funding the schools 6 years in a row, that number doesn't go down. That number goes up, and it's projected to go up next year to 7 million. So that's a message that people are getting, that South Kingstown is not supporting their school system. So you say that young families aren't coming here because of housing. That is partially true, but I think it's also partially true that the ones that are here are not all staying here, and there's a huge cost associated with that. So the message I get is, we've been here since 2018, my family, and ever since we've had students in the school system, there's been level funding. and programs have been cut, schools have been closed. It's just an overall message that the town is not very supportive. Now, we've had a swing in that with the vote for the new high school and voting down the cut to the budget last year in the referendum. But just to mention there. And I guess to go back to the point about, like the point that you made that, they're entirely used by the school department. You wouldn't have them if you didn't have schools, but then you wouldn't have really a town. So, I mean, there's logic there, but you have to look at both sides of that is, yeah, if you don't have a school resource officer and you don't have crossing guards, you don't have schools.
I'm not suggesting not having the positions.
Yeah,
I'm just trying to figure out the
I understand that,
accounting.
but you're shifting the responsibility that it's fully because you're doing that because of the schools. So the school department's budget is proposing a cut of 16.8 full-time employees, but the town manager's budget is increasing by 2, which I think is probably a 100% increase for the town manager's office. So just another point there.
We did eliminate, I don't know, I think you came in a little late, we did eliminate 2 positions in the town manager's office because there's a retirement and they're going to be able to restructure a little bit.
Okay.
So we did,
I did miss that then.
that's okay.
One last point I wanted to make is there was a big emphasis in the budget presentation that our aging population is, the largest growth. How much of that is impacting our emergency services and why we need more emergency services? So that's my 5 minutes.
All right, thank you.
We took your time. Do you need any more time, Mr. LaRose? No. Okay.
Hello, everyone. I'm Jessica Drew Day. I enjoyed the meeting last week over the school budget. Let's bring this down a little bit. And I went home and I was thinking about it. And when my son went to school, I have a son and a daughter, they rode the bus. And my son would get on the bus at 5:30 and ride it. He was the only kid. But the bus driver had to drive the whole route, just in case a child was getting on, because the way the program works is you opt in just in case your kids need to ride the bus. So I was thinking about it, and I was like, what if you had a rebate program or an incentive program for the parents that sign up just in case, and said, and the numbers I was looking at are wrong. I was looking at the budget from last week, and now the budget that you put out has different numbers. But for instance, I was thinking a parent that opts out, maybe give them at the end of the year a rebate of $50 a month, so $500 a year. And out of the 2,200 kids, I was looking at the budget from last week, it would be around $1 million. So rebating the parents that opt out, that's just if every kid did it, which, the parents probably wouldn't, but then it would give them, and then that $500 they could use for the school camp, the summer camp that was being cut. And the program was like $6 million for busing. So I was like, so $1 million, and then you'd have a $5 million, basically $5 million if every child, which we know every child won't do it, but then the buses wouldn't be empty because the parents that really do need it would be opting in, and they could reroute the program to just pick up the kids that need it. And then the other parents, like for my daughter, I always opted in, but I always drove her, so it was just in case I needed the bus. And when I talked with Mrs. Whitford last week, she said the same thing. She goes, well, what if they don't do the route and then there's a kid that needs to be picked up that day? So I was thinking about it, and I thought maybe that would be a good idea. It's just a way to maybe save some money, but I don't know. That's all I have.
It's good to think outside the box.
I feel like busing is one of those very complicated things. I'm not on the school committee, but I also know that because the town is very large, if you have to drive all the way out in West Kingston and bring that student to the high school or to West Kingston, it's a long ride. Even if there's 2 students, the bus still needs to go there. So like that, it's
No, I get it.
it's
It
travel
takes 20
time.
minutes to drive across
Yeah,
our town.
it's travel time.
I know.
I think there's a
But
limit.
but if the kids that are signing up are actually getting on and off the bus, maybe they could route it in a way, and then you wouldn't need so many buses because it would be more efficient. So I would imagine maybe like 20 or 30% of the parents would take advantage of it, and you'd still save some money because you wouldn't need as many buses. So,
And I think there'll be some savings. They talked about the 2-tiered busing system on Thursday. So they used to have three buses, elementary bus, middle school bus, and high school. So now they have just 2 tiers, just the elementary and then the middle school and high school are together. So I think they anticipate some savings. I felt like I was hearing maybe that there could be some money there.
yeah,
But
and just as a parent, I don't think they realize how much it really costs the town to just opt in and maybe use it because the buses are empty. So, I really liked, someone had mentioned last week that they're looking at other buses, so maybe like hybrid, like a Prius, if there's only 2 kids, just a Prius picking up the kids rather than a whole big school bus. But yeah, I just was thinking about it. I was like, maybe that would be a good program at the end of the year, $500 at the end of the year to a parent that drove their kid every day to school. They'd maybe appreciate the money too.
Thank you.
Thank you. Is anyone else going to speak?
Anyone else in the audience wish to speak? Anybody just come on up?
I have something to say.
Jim O'Neill, Wakefield. Just a couple of things. One, I wanted to thank Ms. Bergner for pushing the 1105. The current, I'm up to 21 calls, and I am just even now confused as to why they don't have a better understanding of it. But everyone was so familiar with last year's activity. I'd appreciate it if you at least kept them parallel through the June of this year to help some of us novices out here who are trying to help out some of our neighbors. But to Brian, if I could, Mr. President.
Go ahead, Jim.
The schools this year, I know they were asking for $2.4 million and about 16 some odd FTE cuts. So they're asking for about $800,000 now. And so we're flirting with the 4% levy state rule on what we can use for what were needed costs. If the schools, if everything did not change for the next 2 years, fiscal 27, fiscal 28, the ban in 27 is about $2.5 million. The ban in 28 is about $3.75 million. If the town just kept it close to 1%, and the schools got another $500,000 plus, that still puts us well over the 4% levy. What can we do? What are we going to do? How do we conform without some massive personnel cuts, at least in the school department?
So I don't have a lot of information for future years on me, so I'm going off of memory on some of this because the focus is next year's, but correct. To get to your point first, where the proposed levy is 3.37 this year, we have approximately 420,000 that were under the 4% cap. That we could go up approximately another 427,000. So that's about where we are for the cap this year. I know you had mentioned that. In terms of next year, year 2 on the bans is going to have a little bit more of an impact than this year, and it's going to be tighter. Where I would expect where we're 3.3, and then year 3, I think we're going to level off a little. It's the way it's projecting right now. Year 2 probably will be a little higher than this, and then year 3 will level off some.
All right, so you're confirming what just easily could happen.
Yes.
What would happen if in May, when we get final estimates for the high school, what would happen if it were up $5, $7, $10 million from the original baseline that was expected? Would it change the band financing? Would it up, down, or it only change the bond financing possibly?
I don't, we have authorization to bond up to 150 million, and
Yeah.
that's the cap.
Okay,
Yep.
okay. Just a couple of other things here. I bring up here, I've got articles on Providence and even the RIPTA articles this past weekend. RIPTA running a $32 million loss. Providence. Anyway, what it boils down to are the rescue fund money, the inflation fund money, the COVID money. We seem to obey the rules. Providence state aid education obviously is going up, but they've kept over 100 of their ESSER employees. You're looking at structural deficits, 100 of those ESSER folks. They knew what the rules were. They knew when the money was running out. Same thing with RIPTA. They knew when the money was running out, but they kept the personnel. And who pays for that? We do. We cough in more money to Providence. They want more money at RIPTA. I don't understand, the rules, why they don't work the same from everybody else here. What my concerns are with what I'm looking out in a couple of years here, you heard him mention the career tech programs tonight, and we certainly do hope we get those votes back, but I'm wondering why we wouldn't put in a legislation request, what I mentioned last week. We're helping these other host communities, specifically Narragansett and Charahoe. I don't understand why we can't get our average cost of students, 100 kids, down to that 10,000 level or even lower. We're helping them fill out their classrooms. Why should we pay individual rates? I can understand if we sent one kid, that's one thing, a $21,000 number. But why in the world we can't ask for RIDE to change their rules on that? That could be $1 million, $900,000 to $1 million back in our pocket for fiscal year 26. Why can't we ask for that potential legislation, at least find out why we could not? But why not move forward on that? But otherwise, just listening to what Mr. Sylvia just said, I don't know how the schools are going to avoid some massive cuts, and they're probably going to have to be with the administrators where the top heavy dollars are. So anyway, that'll be it tonight, but hopefully you've got to keep the homestead in front of you, because this more than ever now is really affecting an awful lot of people, and I got the phone calls to prove it. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim.
Brett Harrington. I would argue that the taxpayers in this town understand education, and they're paying daily for it. So when we level fund, we're level funding along the lines of what the student population is doing. People will say they're going to other schools, and they are going to other schools. But it isn't because we're not paying our teachers enough. It's not because we don't, now we've got a new school in front of us. I don't know how many towns are at over 20, a little over 23,000 per kid. I don't know how many other towns are higher than that. So the fact that we don't back the schools, this town is backing the schools, paying their educators extremely well. And, and I always expect, when I'm looking at different things, results. So let's look at how our kids are doing. If my kids I sent my kids to private school because I wasn't happy with the public schools at the time. I was living in Coventry. And again, our system was compensated real well. But the results weren't there. So I felt my kids were better elsewhere. So that's what I looked at. I looked at scores, I looked at results. All I can say is we're paying a lot to educate our kids here, and we're not getting the results, but everybody's compensated very well. So we have to do something. We have to level fund. I talked about regionalization. Mike said, yeah, you need two to tango. Well, we need to do the hard work there. If it's actually 25% savings, if we do regionalize with another town, I don't think it's going to be a tough sell to the taxpayers of those other towns. Hey, you want to put 25% savings in your pocket? Let's see where that goes. That's all I got.
Thank you.
Is it hot? He's hot.
Good evening. My name is Adrienne Daly, and I have 3 kids in the school district at the moment, 2 in elementary school and 1 in high school. And we've been watching the school district and the school committee and what's been happening over the past few years. It's certainly affected us greatly. And I know that we've been level funding for the past few years, and we've seen what our schools are doing firsthand. And I know, for instance, at Peaceville Elementary, we've got some great administrators and great educators who've been working really, really hard and doing a fantastic job with the students, with their scores, really. And as somebody who teaches at the college level, I've been quite impressed with what the educators are doing in preparing students for college, but also thinking about technical, vocational stuff as well. I think I've lived in other places where schools haven't been funded well, and I see the results of what happens when you don't do that. And I know that education and funding of schools is incredibly important for our communities. We're facing a future right now where we don't know what's going to happen with our schools in terms of federal Department of Education, and that's a lot of uncertainty, and I'm concerned for our school district and what that might mean for us. And I'm concerned that if we talk about trying to trim things down more than we can handle, that's going to really impact. Right now we're trying to make sure that we can attract the students. We know that students are going out of the district to other CTE programs. We want to pull those students back in. I agree with the gentleman that it might kind of be nice to not have to fund our students going out of district, but at the very least right now kind of going, how do we build up the programs to attract families? I know we don't have a lot of leeway, but if we keep, as Tim pointed out, if we keep just doing level funding, it does send a clear message. And the school districts right now are facing a lot of different things, a lot of demands that come at them from the Departments of Education, both the state and the federal, and a lot of demands for what education looks like in the 21st century. And it's really hard to fund that, and they're trying their best to do with this stuff. And if you try to put more pressure on them, you're going to see a negative impact on the quality of the education. And we know how important that is right now for our democracy, our society, for our community. We want the vibrancy that we have with families who have students in the school who want to be here. That's really important for our community. And I just want to make sure that we're not going to damage that. And I will say to the gentleman talking about RIPTA, I ride the RIPTA buses as part of my commute up to URI, so I'm one of the folks who does benefit from the funding and the personnel that they have been putting on the routes. And I do benefit from it, and I see the people who are on that bus in the mornings heading up to Providence, heading up to URI. The buses are actually getting fuller and fuller recently. So we are using them. They are beneficial. I do have a question about the buildings that we closed, the school buildings that we closed. Is that currently part of the school budget, or is that now being maintained by the town? If it's part of the school budget and we aren't using those schools and we close them in part to cut down our budget, why are we still holding on to them? If it's maintained by the town, that's a little bit different story. If we're talking about, where those costs are being shifted, who's doing that right now? Whose budget is that on? And if it's on the school budget, then can we can't do anything with it. And it seems a little bit unfair to be holding on to that as part of our large budget if we can make room for other things. Thank you.
Thank you. Brian, do you want to answer that?
So the town has taken, and then I apologize, I don't know the history of it, but I know the town has taken South Road, and the town is maintaining South Road. There are still some proceeds from a fund, a construction fund for South Road School that the town is using to maintain that on an annual basis. The other buildings that have been closed, they are still, they have not been turned over by the school department to the town, and that would be action of the school committee to turn those over.
All right, thank you.
So
Go ahead.
this was my question, because there is some misinformation that the town won't take it, the school's trying to give it. I don't think that, you might not be prepared tonight, so I don't want to put you on the spot. I was going to ask you to talk about it on Monday, next Monday, when we meet at a regular meeting, because I think well, my understanding is Wakefield School was not, I use the word trashed out, so there's still a lot of stuff there, and that was some concern that who was going to move that, and I just want to ask you to speak publicly on it, if you don't feel comfortable tonight.
No, I'll give you the answer. So I've been here almost 3 years now. I've been asking since day one, turn these over. Wakefield School was filled with stuff, like a dumpster almost. And, you know, the agreement was clean it out and we'll take it. And they've made some progress, for sure, but it's still not all cleaned out. And Curtis Corner was a little better, but we, you know, the town is not pushing back, saying we're not taking it. We're just waiting for them to be clean, so we don't have to clean them out, and we take them. We've asked multiple times. I've asked the other superintendents
Right.
before,
Okay.
many times.
Because people think it's the town that's...
It's not the town.
Okay.
We've asked for them.
We've asked for them?
Yes.
Okay. And we're actively working on repurposing those two properties and another property?
Well, yes. I mean,
Watson Home.
Well, there are the South Road School, Wakefield School, and Watson property, yes. I mean, there's been lengthy discussions on repurposing those for housing.
We're not repurposing Curtis Corner for housing.
I'm sorry, not Curtis Corner.
Right.
Curtis Corner's with the athletic fields, yes.
But that one's becoming more important as we get closer to developing the fields as part of the high school project. So it needs to be turned over.
Sorry, Doral, for stepping in.
Doral Beasley. So when we went from a three-tier to a two-tier bus system this year, we got all of $300,000 in savings. $300,000, that's what Ocean State Transit gave us. You were right at the last meeting. Transportation's eating our lunch. Okay? It's going to be $6 million next year. We either need to get into the bus business, or we need to regionalize in Narragansett, because they have buses. Between our two towns this year, Narragansett and South Kingstown, we're spending $105 million for our schools, for 3,200 students. And we have 600 employees between the two districts. 600 employees, $105 million, 3,200 students. Barrington, 3,300 students, $65 million, 400 employees. So right there's where the problem is. South Kingston has too many people working in our school district. It's the ratio, full-time employees to students. It's 5.9. Now they said, oh gee, we cut 16.8 people. They didn't cut those people. Those people retired. They didn't cut anything. The ratio is exactly the same. They took the 16.8 and it's still 5.9. You know what a proper ratio is? At least 6.5. 6.5 students per employee, if not 7.
We have people in this town that are hurting. Judge Dalia and his wife, insurance company that they've had for 45 years for their home, dropped them, cold turkey. We don't want to insure you anymore. We have that happening to people on our coastline now. Home insurance, auto insurance rates are going through the roof. Why? Because we've had all these incredible natural disasters all over the country. It's not going to stop, okay? Global warming's here. It's going to go worse and worse and worse. It's easy to raise people's taxes when you don't pay any property taxes. Oh, yes, it is, okay? Level funding. I'll say this until I'm blue in the face. This town is not level fund our schools, okay? Level funding is only level funding if your enrollment never changes, okay? If you give the same amount of money and the enrollment stays the same, that's level funding. When the enrollment drops, like this town's has for 23 straight years, we've lost 50% of our enrollment now. 4,400, we're down to 22. Okay? When you have to take and adjust your number by your student loss. So it's not level funding. Every year, in the last 3 years, just in the last 3 years alone, from our property tax transfer, we now pay 18% more than we did 3 years ago. In 3 years, 18%. That's 6% a year. The taxpayers in this town, the ones that are going to be paying the freight for this new high school, they need a tax break. They need a break. And by the way, I don't believe the calculation you did on the adjustment for loss of students, the one on that last page. I don't think that's right. I'll come over and see you tomorrow.
Thank you, Doyle.
Hi, Carol Vetter. I just want to say that when we have declining enrollment because our students are leaving to CTE programs and charter schools, our expenses go up, not down. So just because we have declining enrollment does not mean we have declining expenses. They're not correlated. But what I really want to say is thank you guys. This needs to be a collaborative process, and I think we've done that, which is good for our town. We don't want it to be an us against them, so thank you for that. I also want to give you a little background on how we got to the $800 ask. Because when I said that we did a very minimal ask, we really tried to get it to zero, but without hurting our students. So we cut 1.6 million, and it hurts. Every FTE is a person, and to cut 16.8, they're not retirees. These are people that are losing their livelihoods. And it hurts when you have to do that to people. Sorry. So we got down to 800,000 to a balanced budget. But we can't cut anything that funds the BEP. And we are committed to our music, arts, theater, sports. We don't want to make those cuts. So what's left? What's left are things like the accreditation of our high school, the credit recovery program. If we lose our credit recovery program, our graduation rate goes down to 77%. We're in the 90s. That's brutal. So these are hard cuts. The late bus, after-school programs, these are all we're left with. So finding $800,000, it's a small ask because it takes a lot of these small programs to get to $800,000. So we did a lot of hard work to come to with a very small ask. Rory, I do think your solution of moving the restricted fund for healthcare, the part that's ours to the school side, it does help this year. But this is the one time I'll agree with Jim O'Neill that we're really going to end up in a problem next year, though. I agree, we've got to deal with this year. And that would help us go a long way to solving this year's budget. But again, if you look at future deficits, we're not doing anything to solve those. But I do thank you. I just want you to realize the work we've done and why we came with that $800,000 ask.
Thank you.
Carol, thank you for all of your hard work and for really speaking from your heart. It makes a difference, and I know that that was not easy, but I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Paula Whitford. So I just wanted to highlight a few things. I think a couple of months ago when we first started our budget session, the topic came up about FTEA, the teachers. And there's a lot that has not been said this week between last week and today. We have cut, as Ms. Vedder has said, many teachers. And many of those teachers are paraprofessionals such as literacy coaches, math interventionists, and all of those folks that our students need to be successful. And because we've been level funded and had to let those people go first, we have not been able to bring them back. We need those type of services for our students, but right now we're focusing on not cutting programs. And we come to you with the ask that we did, and we're hoping that you will invest in our students. Please invest in our students' education. That's what we're supposed to do as a town. That's what we need to do as a town. That's what our students expect us to do as a town. And with all the uncertainty, I get it. I also get the taxpayers. But we also need to remember that our students, some of their parents, are taxpayers as well. And some of them choose to keep their children in their home school. So the one thing that we can't be uncertain about is our students' education.
Thank you. Anyone else in the audience wish to speak? All right, seeing none, we're going to move on to the budget deliberations here. Do we want to take up municipal and school first and then move over to human service and outside agencies? That's a possibility. We could take this in two different votes, or we could wait till the end and vote in one chunk.
I was just going to make a comment.
Good.
So regarding like education in the town and everything, I think I just wanted to speak to the fact that when we make decisions, I do, and I think for the most part, I feel this, I could say all of you take big picture views on these things. For example, we know that in next year's budget, if we bring Craig's 2 AMS on, we're going to bring 4 on next year. We know 2 costs $183, so we know like we're already going to be increasing what we ask and trying to like think big picture at the same time when the school project's happening. So we do try to think, I try to think about all of those things. I try to make a good decision for the whole community. There are 7 homes who no longer have children or don't have children in the district, and there are 3 homes in the community who do have 3 out of 10 who have kids in the district. So you have that 70-30 split there. I also think, and we talk about the average income, we're not a wealthy community. The average income in South Kingstown for a resident, for a household, is about $100,000. So when you look at the $100,000, you live in a regular, average priced home, you have $4,000 or $5,000 tax bill. I mean, we try to look at all of those components when we make a decision, because we know, even when we hear from the human service agencies, that there's a huge invisible population who doesn't come and say, I'm struggling and I need help and I can't fix my roof. I talk about the lady with the leaky roof all the time. She doesn't get a new roof, she patches her roof. Those are the people in our community that our social service agencies help fix their steps or their shower or their sink. So we have to I'm always trying to pay attention who isn't speaking the loudest, who's just trying to make do. And so we have to balance. I certainly never want to make any decisions when people say don't hurt the kids. I wouldn't want to do that. I don't want to do that. I don't want to do that ever. But I want to be able to be fair to all the other people who are trying to figure out stuff. So that's why last Thursday we talked about just what the rate would be. And for people to say like the taxes are going to go up 31 cents if it was flipped over on $11, it's eye-opening, because the 904, or maybe it's 899 now, it doesn't make we don't translate it. But if I said your taxes are going to go up 35 cents, people went into sticker shock because that made sense. I don't say it because I think I say it because I want people to understand what it is, and so that they can make a good decision for themselves. And it's really hard because I think every year the schools are wonderful. I do not disagree. The teachers are wonderful. I do not disagree. The teachers are well paid, and they're here, and they're all top step, and people come and say that because many of them can't retire. They're working till they're 67 with 40 years of experience. We have this aging in place teacher population. There's all these factors that make all those things happen, and there's not really ever a good solution. So I try to zoom out and try to make the best decision for everybody, and that's how I do it. So I just wanted to say that as my community comment. Thank you.
And I would just like to sort of tag on to that. So I come to this from being self-employed for many years. And I've been in businesses that are very cyclical. So you have money at some point and then you don't have money. So I'm used to that, sort of looking at things in that perspective. So when I look at, like the school operating fund, I see we have $525,000 in federal aid. We have $300,000 in federal aid for food for our kids. So we have a lot of uncertainties. We have them now this year. And so we've all been sitting here pretty much a lot. I mean, I don't even know how many hours of budget meetings we've all gone through. But when you zoom out and look at all of it, I feel really uncertain, and that's what makes me want to make sure that we have enough just in case something worse happens, and so that we can feed people. Basically, that's where I'm coming from, and trying to be as fiscally conservative and cautious as possible.
I think that this budget, and it's my first budget, really reflects a lot of our town values while staying fiscally responsible. We have members of the school committee here. You've heard from residents that we need to continue to invest in education while also remaining fiscally responsible. Our finance director has said it out loud that it's not really this year that we're worried about, it's next year. And I want to put it out there now with our school committee members in the audience. Let's get started on increasing the synergy between the town and the school district. I know we have shared services already. I am sure that we can eliminate some duplicative processes we have. And let's start this summer. Let's not wait. But again, like Councilwoman Alley said, we've been spending a lot of time here, and I don't think I'm the only one here that's been thinking about how can we keep this town a place where we're investing in our education, which we are, but also folks don't get pushed out of here. And I think that we've done a good job at that. And again, I just want to thank the town and the staff for working so hard on giving us some options, and encourage us all to work together and buckle down, because we're going to have to, in the next year, tighten our budget because we have those payments we have to make. So let's do these dual track ideas together and plan for next year. So that's all I have to say.
All right. So we've had a lot of good discussion. We've fleshed out this budget pretty well. I think it's been evident that we've been trying to seek out ways to reduce the tax rate the best we can with what we're working with here. Being mindful of the school's needs, while also being mindful of the taxpayers as well. And I think that's evident. I think the way we go through the budget, deliberate, try to find alternatives, a different way to do funding or potential ways to cut funding, shows that. So it's been a good process. This is the preliminary budget adoption night tonight. We still have public hearings to have in the future, and then final budget adoption end of May. So still time for more information to arise and potentially make changes, but this is a good starting place. And I think now we should either vote on the municipal and school sides of the budget, or move to the human service and outside agencies and then take everything up as a one block. But I feel comfortable doing it either way. So whatever anyone thinks here.
I think the people who came out would probably want us to vote and then do the grants, because
All right, I'm going to tell you guys what I have here for consensus, and you just kind of tell me if we're on the same page. With respect to the municipal side, removing the director of grants position and removing the communications manager position. With respect to the 2 EMS personnel, making those personnel fully funded by the EMS billing fund. Moving over that 80+ thousand that is in the West Bay Collaborative Fund to the town to be used and offset against the town's health care expenses in the budget. Shifting of the tax software and computer software expenses on the school's budget, those shared services there. However, an increase in the amount of the transfer from the unassigned fund balance equal to that amount, approximately $70K. That's what I have on the municipal side. Go ahead.
I'm not sure right now what the amount is, but again, on the 80K of the healthcare management fund on the town side, that's what's used annually to fund our OPEB valuation. And it goes on a 2-year cycle. We do a full look every 2 years, and then on an off year, they just kind of refresh it. So I believe we're just due for a refreshment this year. It's a cheaper cost. I don't have the number off the top of my head, but we're not going to have that funding, and that'll have to get added in as well. And I don't, apologize, I don't have that number right now, but that is now, we don't have a funding source for that right now.
So we'll use the West Bay Collaborative funds to fund that.
So-
Whatever remaining is there, we'll use to offset the current healthcare costs that work?
Yes.
Okay. So that's municipal side. On the school side, we already discussed the shifting of the shared services, the tax software, the computer services of approximately $70K, and then transferring that $600K approximately for the West Bay Collaborative Fund to the schools. That's what I have here.
But we want an opinion from legal about not affecting the school transfer.
Yes, that, and I think we need an opinion from legal on how to do this, and also I'll have to get together with Ryan and how it gets done on his side as well, but yes, we'll work that out.
So
We'll be able to pass this tonight, and then if we need to make an amendment to reflect whatever legal's opinion is, we can
Yes.
do that at the final budget adoption.
Correct.
Okay, great.
that sounds good.
We all in agreement on that one?
I think so.
Do I hear a motion on that?
Motion to approve the preliminary budget as outlined by President Murray McEntee.
Second.
All those conditions.
All right, we got a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All right, that passes. Now we can move on to human service and outside agency funding.
Yep. Well, if anyone wants to go, feel free.
Wow. Everybody's.
All righty, let's get into it. Any suggestions, thoughts? We're looking at requests, which just about double the amount that we've allocated here for human service and outside agency funding. Any thoughts? Feel free to jump in.
I don't think it's double. I've got it at 50%, going from 182 to 313 is the request, and the manager kept the amount level in his budget, correct?
The total amount we've allocated is 182,
Yes,
182.50?
that's right.
Okay.
That's what was planned in the manager's budget. I think my first inclination is to just say keep everything level from what it was last year. I'm not sure.
But if you do that, I think there are new people or new asks, so I thought the same, but no. you
That's
can't.
what I was about to say is, but there are some people that will not be covered who are in
Correct.
here.
So. Let's keep them the same?
30.
Yeah, I would like to, for those that we wish to fund, I'd like to try to keep flat as compared to last year to the extent we can.
I think let's try, I almost wish in the future we had a live spreadsheet that we could put the amounts in and it would sum in real time, because now we're gonna scribble and scratch.
I guess my question is, last year it says, for example, the Welcome House, it's $10,000 last year. They're requesting $25,000. Do you all remember what they were requesting the 15 extra for?
I think it's just the need.
It's
The need.
Meals in need, yeah, it's not I think what I remember is many of these people didn't expand their programs. The expanded program was the Galilee Mission. Remember, she came and she said, I'm trying to make something new. That's all sounded like food from.
I would agree with you, Mr. President, that we should probably keep them flat from the previous year, but I would be more inclined to keep the Welcome House request.
No,
I'd like to think about the human service agencies first as our top, maybe, or?
Yeah, that's where we're at here, right?
Yeah.
So Johnny Cake, I feel good about 30. Education exchange, I feel good about flat. What do we think?
Flat.
Okay.
I think
Domestic violence resource.
Flat.
Welcome House, I would just give the same.
Which
I
it would
give
be flat.
10.
All right, we can come back to that.
And then we can revisit, yeah.
Mhm.
Chris Collins, 5.
Yep, flat.
Kane Development Center,
Flat, that's what
Flat.
I'm feeling.
flat.
Southern RI Volunteers.
They asked for 6.
Yep,
They're awesome.
yep. Neighbors helping
Our
neighbors.
favorite.
Yep, same thing.
They're at 5.
Society of St. Vincent de Paul, I don't think we should fund this, and the basis for that is that I believe we could use the funding and allocate it elsewhere, and I'm just gonna leave it at that.
I agree.
Galilee Mission, I thought it was an interesting idea.
I don't
Right.
think we can, as much as I really love the idea of new projects, I just want to see where we are with our ones that we've supported
Mhm.
all through these years.
So let's just put a hold there at the Galilee
Okay.
Mission.
Okay?
Oops.
Well, Boys and Girls Club.
So-
That's actually a decrease.
Right, because they didn't use the whole 20,000 allocation, so they're giving us a credit, which is like applaud them for being integritous. Is that a word?
Are we going back to
It's
jumping
not,
around?
but it's,
We're at the
but
bottom
you know
of
what
the
I
list?
mean. Hmm?
Having integrity.
We're probably gonna go all the way to the bottom.
All the way to the bottom,
Yeah.
including outside agency requests?
So we feel
One
good-
thing that I would really like to know is what agencies do with this. You know, I'd love to have a little reporting after the fact to know sort of what
They-
happens.
They tell you when they, so I remember Boys and Girls Club, they came.
Well, I
correct?
remember them, but I'm thinking about I'm jumping ahead in my head.
Okay, so,
We feel good, Boys and Girls Club, 17,260,
it's such an odd number.
maybe 15?
So
Go ahead.
the ones that I think personally, and I'm not dying on this hill here, but I think that we should fund the Welcome House for 15,000 as opposed to their request of 25,000. I think the Galilee Mission should get half of the request, and I think that the Boys and Girls Club in Newport, depending on what they're looking for, I forget what they're looking for. Is it programmatic or is it?
I don't, so I think with the Galilee Mission, she's trying to hire a grad student and things, so I don't know if funding half would make that program work. She's trying to build a program, that's the cost of the program.
So then, if that's the case, I would be inclined to, in my opinion, the Galilee Mission serves a really important part of this community, especially on substance abuse and keeping folks that need help off the street. And it's right in Peacedale, so that's my personal
That's not
council
what,
person.
this program, this is for family counseling.
Right.
All right, well, we've already freed up 4, so maybe we could put in the Galilee Mission.
So,
90 now, so can we go through the others first here
Yeah,
before we
let's go
start?
down. Yeah.
Okay, so we know we're going to have 7 for the parades
Yep.
and 10 for the fire.
yep, because that's the scholarship.
Before you keep going, we skipped over League of Cities and Towns. Sorry. We skipped over League of Cities and Towns. Wasn't there something about Jim needing money for dues or something?
That's been moved to the town manager's budget.
Okay.
All right, Wakefield Village, I think we
Level.
gotta keep it at the 5.
The chamber, I would level.
Yep.
I think Tiger does good work, but I think we can't, we're not in the position to give more. We have to start with level and seeing if we have any,
All right, I'm okay with that, 7.5. South County History,
Same.
same.
South County Museum, that's in Narragansett, so we passed on this.
Mhm.
Friends of the Saugatucket, I feel like that's really important with the hydrilla and the potential loss of environmental grants.
We can level fund.
That's only.
It's
You're
1,000.
looking for 4,500.
Right.
I'm concerned about the environment. but I would,
Last year, we gave them
All right.
1,000.
I'm gonna mark that. Let's see what we have left over to reallocate.
Right, I would be inclined to grant them 2,000.
This is, it's also, remember, every time we go up, our taxpayers, our residents are paying for this. This isn't, like, we're already, like, if people want to give of their own personal values money, that's one thing, but we are deciding for a community and then beefing it up. So I'm just nervous about, I'd like to land at 182, and so if we keep adding, we're already over.
I'm inclined to potentially increase that to 2,000 as well, but let's keep going here. I got that marked.
Okay.
Wakefield Concert,
Interesting.
550?
Yeah.
SK Housing Authority?
I think it's $2,000.
Say level.
It's 18.
Yeah, level 18. Or we could just top it off at Narrow River, 2,500.
What? What is getting 2,500?
Narrow River,
Where are we?
at the end.
That's all, wait a minute.
Oh,
Did you jump ahead?
I skipped
to the
about
end?
3 or 4.
Okay.
You level funding, and you want to have a conversation with these others?
We got 4,000 left.
Oh, how do you know?
oh, you did it.
Because the only one we didn't fund was Society of St. Vincent de Paul, 4,000.
The Wildlife Rehabilitators Association, I think that we can skip that.
We haven't filled in any numbers for Galilee and St. Peter.
We have 4,000 left from that
Yeah, no.
182.
That's right.
So can we add another 1,000 to Saugatucket?
We haven't funded some of them, like St. Elizabeth, like there's the elderly at St. Elizabeth's, there's Peacedale Housing. Did we, we're not going to give Peacedale House any money? I'm confused.
I would prefer to put more money into Peacedale Housing while keeping an important group like the Friends of the Saugatucket at like 2,000.
So, I mean, we could do 2,000 Friends of the Saugatucket, that leaves 3,000 left. We could give all that to Peacedale United. That leaves out Galilee Mission.
And are we level, is the Welcome House just getting 10?
Yes, that leaves the Welcome House at 10.
Okay. I mean, everybody's getting something. I know that it's not what they hope to get. Most people are, I mean, the typical, these are like the basic needs people, right? So food, shelter, safety from abuse and trauma.
Respectfully, I don't think everybody is getting everything, right? Like if we have, the
Well-
Galilee Mission is out in the cold, the wildlife rehabilitators are out in the cold.
But they're new, they've never been funded before.
I'm not advocating for them, I'm just saying that per their request, that's all.
Oh, you're gonna do that in live, Luke? Oh, you're awesome.
That's nice.
Can you just make it a little bigger for my old eyes?
Luke Murray, you're my hero.
Are we good on 2K to Friends of the Saugatucket?
I am too.
All right, I'm good on that. That leaves 3,000. What do you want to do?
Did you give money to the Peacedale Housing?
No,
people?
but I'm okay with 3,000 there. That leaves out Galilee Mission. Are we okay with that?
Gonna do at Peacedale Housing with it? What were I know they had talked about, like, expanding possibly, but I don't know, like, with this 3,000 specifically.
Do you have their application for Peacedale Housing, Luke?
And when you're ready, it might be a prudent idea for Rory to go back down from the top about the numbers that we've kind of popcorned here.
Yep.
Is that Peacedale House?
So using it for fire stop canisters for each unit, tree removal and general cleanup, hot water heater and installation of, I don't even know what that is. Plumbing and heating.
Oh,
That's
Kazunas, they're
that's the name of
local
the company.
people.
All right,
You're not
I've
from
used
here.
I'm out.
How about if we fund the fire stop, is that like a fire extinguisher?
Mm-hmm.
That'd be could
Or
we
just
just?
fund that amount?
Yeah,
1,478.30?
We give them $1,500?
And then the 1,500, and then the remaining 1,500 to
right.
Galilee Mission?
I just really am concerned about funding, developing that dependency on us.
Luke, could you pull up the Galilee mission, please?
No.
So the Galilee mission,
I'm
she
not even
wants
there.
to hire a grad student from the Marriage and Family Therapy Program at URI for one semester to pay
15.
her
Got it.
for her hours, and she's going to do that work. And then I don't know, that person is going to leave and graduate, and I don't know what the pickup will be. I had a lot of questions, but there wasn't. There's also Peacedale revitalization that we didn't talk about.
Oh, that's right. That's a good one.
Yeah, that is a good one.
And Therese came in and said that those events are intended to be walkable to the community that
All
might
right,
not.
I got a proposal here. How about Boys and Girls Club at 15,000? That frees up another 2,200. How do we feel about that? That would get some to Peacedale neighborhood revitalization.
I like that. It's going to be really important to give people something to look forward to, I think.
So that would, Boys and Girls Club be 15,000. And
Give
then,
2 to Peacedale neighborhood revitalization.
yeah,
Can I put this out there? I mean, we're funding, you guys, how much did you want to fund for the Boys and Girls Club of Newport?
So they take kids from here and they take them to Camp Grosvenor, I think is the name of the camp. And I think she said there's like 12 or so kids that do that. They take whoever, they sign the kids up. So it's summer camp for the kids. Even though it sounds the Boys and Girls, we don't have a Boys and Girls Club, as you know. So this is their like South County side.
And the school got rid of something on their camp. They got rid of a camp, right? The school did on their budget.
I don't know, it might be a different set of weeks, you know.
It might, but like if they're getting rid of a camp, then
We have an expert.
we don't want to get rid of all the camps.
Right. Well, it just, but in some ways, if they didn't use the whole allocation the last time, they did. Correct.
Right.
So the suggestion of 15 kind of does make sense?
Yeah, I like that. Let's do that.
what did I just miss?
I think Patty and I discussed 15 for the Boys and Girls Club because the year
Yep.
we gave them 20, they didn't need the extra 2. Maybe they don't really need the extra 2 again, and
Yeah, I'm with that.
15.
We got 1,700 left over. How about Galilee Mission?
I don't think that program is possible.
So, Luke, the request for the monies by Galilee Mission, just give us a brief on that quickly, if you can.
On what they're using it for?
They requested
What they're
monies to be
proposing.
used in some certain way.
Yeah, they're requesting, I think Councilwoman Berger brought up the point, they were going to hire a counselor from URI that was going to serve for a term for counseling services.
It's not something that I think.
Not tenable.
Yeah.
Well, I guess the 1,700, if it were to go that way, it would just be used to offset the cost. It wouldn't pay for it.
Right.
How many, and maybe, excuse me, but how many SK residents are going to summer programming at the Boys and Girls Club of Newport?
Luke,
The one that we were talking about here.
can you pull it up?
The number that's stuck in my head is 30 or so.
30-ish?
I don't know.
I'm just saying,
They provide transportation, they pick these kids up, they take them for the whole, and weeks of time.
I'm not saying that it's not an important thing.
It's the underserved population.
Sure. What I'm putting out there is that our underserved population in South Kingstown that struggle with substance abuse and family issues use the Galilee Mission in Peacedale and in Narragansett to get back on their feet and try to establish a normal life. And I am saying this from a personal experience about how important it is to get counseling, and how having a counselor funded can eliminate a lot of backlog and can make folks that need help get it faster, more efficiently. That's all I'm saying. So I'm not saying I'm going to win the vote here to fund them. I'm not really even pushing super hard, but I am just advocating to my colleagues that I think it's important, and I will go with the majority here, right? You know, but I just want to point that out there.
And then it's just like one semester grad student.
I 100%. Yeah.
And
Wait,
we're not funding,
wait.
if we don't fund the whole thing, what happens to it? You
Well,
can't
I'm
fund
okay
half
throwing
of
them a
grad
bone
students a
here.
week.
In the event it's not fully, like, it could still partially be utilized for their request here. So it's
No.
not like if the amount is not received, it can't be used, period. Am I correct in my
Are you-
understanding?
It would be a gift. You're just gifting them.
No, it would not. It would be a gift of monies to be used in a certain way. And that certain way would be applied toward whatever that person hired for a semester. In the event the monies aren't used that way, would it come back to the town? Can we flesh that out?
It's difficult the way we distribute funds. In theory, yes. When they sign a disbursement form, they're attesting that they're using it for the intended purpose in the grant application. So yes, which is why they came back and said we had some excess funds. We'd like to roll those over for the same intended purpose. So yes, you asked a specific question. 166 unique children enrolled, ages 5 to 12, out of which 9% were South Kingstown kids. So.
Yeah, I thought it was 12.
15-ish. Yeah.
So I would suggest, I hear you about substance use. I hear you clearly about the need for counseling. And I would say that we would invite them just to reapply next year, and that we then make some hard decisions about, we really want to fund that program. And do you know what I'm saying? Like, we only have so much money. There's 1,000 great ideas.
Sure.
We can only do so much. So we can't shift too much unless we hurt someone else.
I hear you. Mr. President, what was the suggested number right now for the Boys and Girls Club of Newport?
15,000.
So just for the record, we want to send $15,000 to Newport for 15 South Kingstown residents.
You're
Am I missing this?
Yeah,
Okay, how?
because there are students, Paula Whitford's not here, but right?
Well, it's 15 of them, that's
Thank
what
you
that
for saying,
says.
Kate, because in
Is that
20
$1,000 a student?
Yes, but it's summer
Right.
camp. It's hundreds of dollars a week for summer camp.
So I do want to back up a little bit. Boys and Girls Club was one of the applications that was not received by the town by the deadline requested. I just want to point that out there. They did not get it to the town. We did not receive it by the deadline. Am I correct, Luke? They subsequently got it to us. They showed up to a meeting. We afforded them the opportunity to give a presentation
Call
regarding it.
Paula.
Am I right?
That is correct.
This is,
They did. And they are being given consideration.
so in 2018, I sat in the audience and Paula and Sandra came and talked about the transformational experience that Boys and Girls Club was for her grandchildren. Am I right? Yes, you can. I'm by myself here. I mean, I don't, what? No, you're not? Okay, thank you. Because I
It's
feel.
not often that I'll come up and agree with Ms. Bergner these days, but she's unequivocally correct. Paula, Sandra, and there was one other woman with them. They were grandparents who were raising their grandchildren.
Yes.
And they brought the Boys and Girls Club of Newport here to take on because we don't have our own. And it is for children who need it the most. And I would advocate on their behalf that it's up to you guys as far as how much, but I would just caution of going too low because it is a very, it's an invaluable program for
They were
these
actually
kids.
trying to come to South Kingstown and have a branch here, right? In 2018, they were looking to relocate here. It was.
We were trying to use South Road School as the hub and have it be a big, robust program, and funds got cut.
Yeah.
Yeah, and look, I want it to be crystal clear. that
I hear you, though. I hear you.
I want to be crystal
You're
clear
very
about
clear.
my position. My position is I am not opposed to funding the Boys and Girls Club of Newport for $15,000 or whatever the estimate is right now. But I am saying that an investment into a grad student at the Galilee Mission is inherently will exponentially save more money by keeping more people's lives together. Maybe Ms. Bergner is correct that this should be a reapplied for next year, but I would not be the councilman that I am if I did not advocate for this tonight.
Go ahead.
I don't disagree on the importance of the program, although I think we're getting into a either-or competing missions, and that's not necessarily a good thing either. But the way the presentation was made to us, I thought, was they wanted $20,000 from us to fund a $20,000 grad student to do this work. So it was almost presented as sort of an all-in or not.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the problem. We're not talking giving them $20,000.
Right.
I don't think we are. I don't think we are either. So I'm not sure what the value is to us or them to say that we're going to give them $2,500 for a position they now can't afford.
Right.
That's all.
And I guess with process, right? Because my first time. So if we say we hypothetically we allocated $2,000, and then we can't tomorrow reach out to them and say, hey, this is what was allocated. Can this still function? And then they say to us, actually, yes, because we can do it this way, or no, we actually needed the full amount, and when we in the future make an amendment to take that out. Is that the process?
That's a possibility. If we wanted to include 1,700 remaining in funding to Galilee Mission, contingent on use as they specified it in their application, and if we later find out that they can't be used in that way, then we could amend it at the final budget adoption. That's a potential option. I don't know if we want to do that or not, but it's just a thought.
But it is an option that we could consider.
It's an option to consider.
Yeah. Okay.
Sure. We got 1,700 remaining.
So, Council President, if you wouldn't mind running through the numbers again, because my totals aren't adding up to yours.
So starting from the top, Johnny Cake, 30. Education Exchange, 15. Domestic Violence Resource Center, 10. Welcome House of South County, 10. Chris Collins Foundation, 5. Kane Child Development Center, 9. Southern RI Volunteers, 6. Neighbors Helping Neighbors, 5. Boys and Girls Club of Newport, 15. Celebration Parades, 7. Union Fire District, 10. Wakefield Village Association, 5. Southern RI Chamber of Commerce, 9. VFW Post 916, 7.5. South County History Center, 7.5. Friends of the Saugatucket, 2. Wakefield Concert Band, 550. South Kingstown Housing Authority, 18. Peacedale United Housing, 1,500. Peacedale Neighborhood Revitalization, 2,000. Narrow River Preservation Association, 2,500.
And what's left?
Peacedale Neighborhood Revitalization, 2,000. You got the last two, Luke? 2,000 and then 2,500.
Yep. What does it add to? 177. That's what Roy said, 2,500, right?
What's that off by? It looks like about 5 or 4,500. Is that 4,500?
Well, so I'm going to say that we're underfunding Peacedale House. That is a concrete organization that helps people.
Great organization. Peacedale House.
Yeah.
Is a
And we didn't give anything to St. Elizabeth Adult Daycare. And can you just tell me again what they asked for? That you want me to? What did they ask for? Last year they asked for some equipment thing, but we didn't do that. It was something else.
And this is the entity that we lease town property to for about $1 a year?
Yeah. They do. She did a nice job explaining what they did. Yeah. So, I mean, I know they do provide wraparound help for people, you know, meals, activities,
They do,
nursing
I mean, we're
care.
already providing them a great, service in that we give them a $1 lease for the town property. Go ahead.
What'd they
I'll read off the paragraph. We are seeking these funds to support key positions in our day center to help people with memory loss and other disorders to remain in home. These positions include activity directors, program directors, activity aides, case managers, and CNAs. These staff members work closely with our participants each day and are instrumental in helping each participant maintain his or her present level of functioning for as long as possible, et cetera, et cetera.
So I'd like to give more money to Peacedale Housing maybe something small to the adult daycare or nothing to the adult daycare.
All right, we got $4,500 to work with. How about a compromise up here? A small amount to the Galilee Mission for use in the general operations of their activities. Can we do that? Can we fund them outside of what their request is specific to? Luke, go ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. You have full discretion over these funds. I could reach out to them after this meeting and request that they provide some input as far as whether that would work for them and report back to council or report back to the town manager.
I'm fine with that.
I would suggest that she resubmit again as well, because there are key points to that program that are good. I just don't think that we need to, someone has to not get money for that program to happen. And it's hard to do that adjustment. But like, it's a great collaborative. She's getting a grad student, she's helping our community, like she's using our university, like that's all checks a lot of boxes. It's just a huge ask, and this is their first ask ever. So that's also a trigger to be like, what's your first ask? We don't know you, we don't,
How about a proposal? We got $4,500 left, right?
Mm-hmm.
How about $1,500 to increase to the Peacedale Housing?
Yeah, good.
$1,500 to the Adult Day Center, and then $1,500 to Galilee Mission for general use in the operations.
That's why you stayed?
How about that?
So we're adding, I'm not saying that I'm opposed to this, but we are adding agencies rather than just trying to support the ones that we've traditionally supported.
Well, we could spend $4,500 less, and I'm sure the community would be okay with it.
Or we could give Welcome House a little bit more than 10, since they asked for 25.
They asked for 30 now.
They asked for 25.
It says 25 here, yeah.
Oh.
Go ahead, Luke.
I was just looking for clarification on the last one. You were talking about Peacedale Housing increasing them by $1,500?
That's correct.
Okay.
Peacedale United Housing.
I would give them 3. I mean, they got a huge, that $49,000 was a huge ARPA gift, right, grant?
How do we feel about that last proposal there?
I support the proposal, Mr. President.
$4,500 allocated equally among 3, increasing Peacedale United Housing by $1,500, $1,500 to the Adult Day Center, $1,500 to Galilee Mission for use in the general operations of the...
With contingent on Deputy Manager Murray's conversation with them.
All right, we good with that? All right with that? Any amounts that we want to fund higher, would likely have to dig into the town council contingency fund. I don't know if we want to do that or not.
Not at this moment.
All right. I think you got it, Luke. All right, do we hear a motion on this?
Motion to allocate the human service and outside agencies funds as discussed.
Seconded.
And as outlined by Luke Murray in his Excel schedule here tonight.
Cool. Thank you, Nicole.
All right, we got a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All right, that passes.
Motion to adjourn?
Second.
We have a motion to adjourn. We have a second. Any discussion?
Happy St. Patrick's Day, South Kingstown.
Happy St. Patty's Day. Thank you all for coming.